Arias felt like his worst nightmare had truly come to life as he wrestled with the most terrible pain he could imagine. The feeling of being stabbed by this unforeseen creature was so unexpected that he almost thought he was mortal again for a brief moment. His body flashed out of existence and reappeared in the sky a few feet away, where he immediately reached for the gaping wound in his chest. Even though he was no longer being impaled, his wound had yet to heal and that corrosive substance refused to leave his system. This doesn't make any sense. Enemy. Visit for the best novel reading experience. Shia wasn't the kind of creature who made a habit of letting her prey escape, and she would give her last to ensure that Arias knew that. She rushed at him with all four of her clawed appendages out, but Arias was much more wary of her existence after being attacked. Like before, he conjured over 40 of those massive pillars of light and fired them at Shia from every direction. The nightmare used her nimble body to avoid the projectiles by only the faintest of margins, and continued to inch ever closer to the terrified avatar. Stay away from me, you fucking beast. Arias was clearly beginning to become hysterical, and indiscriminately fired his attacks from any direction, causing terrible devastation on the city beneath them. Wait. This is some kind of contracted creature, right? Arias realized. If he finished killing Malaki here, this creature would be no more as well. It was a pity, as Hemera wanted him to suffer more before he kicked the bucket, but there was nothing that could be done about it anymore. Surely, his sweet mother would rather have her son alive by any means necessary. Arias teleported once again and reappeared on the street beside Malaki. The young man's formerly perfect body was riddled with holes all over, but he was still alive and conscious by sheer force of will. He was trying to climb his way off the top of the car he was embedded in when Arias appeared beside him in a flash of golden light. The Avatar of Day grabbed Malaki by his throat and held him high above his head. Even in this situation, Malaki showed a bloody smile as if he was devoid of a single care in the world. Now I know I am not really all that smart, but if I didn't know any better I would think you were trying to kill me. An infuriatingly astounding observation. Arias raised his free hand above his head and transformed it into a blade of light. Malaki's entire life flashed before his eyes within a few brief moments. It was painful, but sweet, and he would have given anything to do it all over again. In the back of his mind, he contemplated accepting Nyx's offer and fully becoming her avatar. He very nearly made the choice, when an impactful memory arose in his mind. The recollection of he and Luna in the bathtub, making a decision to have a child together as soon as they healed her body. It may have been silly, but that brief moment of hesitation stopped his actions firmly within his tracks yet again. He couldn't do it, no matter how badly he wanted to. My sweet boy. Do you believe that Luna would rather have your child, or you? For the first time, the obvious answer seemed to escape Malaki and he could not bring himself to make a decision. Nyx's voice did not play within his mind again for what felt like a long time, but when it did he could practically feel her overwhelming sadness and disappointment. Why, you asked me for a favor and I agreed without a second thought. So that means you owe me too. Malaki didn't know where Nyx was going with this, but he was beginning to feel slightly anxious. I am taking the choice out of your hands. I hope with all of my heart that you forgive me. What are you? Malaki went to the side of the alien creature that had become a cherished part of his life, and he kneeled on the ground as he pulled her into his arms. Scared. Very scared. Shia, I'm here, alright? You don't need to be afraid. Nothing can hurt you now. I promise. Scared. Every utterance of that word broke Malaki's non-existent heart to pieces, and the pain was almost too great to bear. No, it was too great for him to bear. When Nyx asked Malaki to hold on to everything that he valued about himself, he did. And what he placed the highest value on was the love he had for the people closest to him and his desire to protect and avenge them. Because what he valued most about himself was rooted in his emotions. He had developed the emotional stability of an immortal within 2 minutes. There is a reason why the stories about the gods are filled with their obsessive tendency to love, enacting plagues over the smallest of slights, and guarding the most minute trinkets with their lives. Their love is pure and obsessive, their hatred is even more so, and their heartache is incomprehensible to the human mind. Unlike humans whose feelings can change with the wind, The Hyers and those like them love and hate things with all of their being for all of eternity. In hindsight, it was partially a good thing that Mal was practically immortal now. If he wasn't, he likely would have killed himself from this horrible grief that he had no idea how to process. But because he couldn't do that, his despair changed to desperation. He focused on the tether that connected he and Shea together, and tried not to cry out when he felt it rapidly weakening. "You can't leave me, Shea. Not you too." He began to pull her body into himself, at the same time as he tried to strengthen the tether between them. Shea's body was absorbed entirely into his, and he felt another change taking place within his being. But in this moment, he couldn't have cared less about that and focused instead on keeping his companion alive. Just a little more. Just a bit. No. When Shea's body was fully ingrained into his own, the tether that unified the two of them broke. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't feel her. And he could no longer hear her. In the back of his mind, he tried to tell himself that she was still there and her touch was still within his body, but his logical mind was overshadowed by the grief within his heart. On his knees, he stared up into the sky and let out a terrible heartbroken scream that traveled for miles. The sky above, which should have been beautiful and twinkling with lights, was swallowed up in total darkness. But it wasn't just in the south of the US where he lived. The entire world felt Malachi's grief as it was engulfed in a pitch-black night with no chance for sunlight to break through. In the hospital, things had fallen into a bit of a frenzy as a result of Malachi's battle with Arias. The sound of the explosions inside could be heard from literal miles away, and the sky suddenly becoming as bright as day didn't help much either. Besides, the whole world had just seen Aria's live stream from the party, and now their fears were at an all-time high. There was a blessed supremacy group out there. How long have they existed? Up to dated from? Are they going to kill all of the humans or make them slaves? Why hadn't the government told them about this? And most importantly, what was going to happen to humans in the future? The mood was so terrible. No one was paying attention to the two very beautiful women sitting in the waiting room. Luna could not stop herself from staring out the window with a worried look on her face, and it was clear that she was very torn about what she should do next. Irregardless of whether she liked it or not, Mal had sent her away because he didn't want her to be anywhere near the conflict. 10:33. But despite all of the steps he'd taken to keep her safe, she was on the verge of undoing all of his hard work and running back to his side. Irregardless of whether she liked it or not, Mal had sent her away because he didn't want her to be anywhere near the conflict. But despite all of the steps he'd taken to keep her safe, she was on the verge of undoing all of his hard work and running back to his side. She nearly made a decision, but movement out of the corner of her eye reminded her that she was not alone. Aubrey was sitting next to her, clearly still reeling from the shock that came with almost being murdered by some psychopath that she didn't even know. Luna realized that what Mal would need from her the most in this moment was not to save him, but to be there for his sister. "Aubrey, are you all right?" Why yeah, I'm fine," she lied. Luna reflexively pulled the young girl into her body and held her tightly without allowing for the slightest chance of escape. She did not offer her any words of consolidation, as this gentle and warm gesture was more than enough to get her point across. Aubrey relaxed within her embrace and she finally stopped shaking for the first time since they entered the hospital. The two of them sat there motionless and distraught for what felt like an eternity. After holding on to each other for a long time, a change finally took place outside. The sky that was formerly a crystal clear blue, was swallowed up by the most beautiful darkness that one could imagine, or at least that was how Luna and Aubrey saw this fabricated night. To everyone else, they saw it as something frightening and a sign that the world was about to end. "I guess that means he's fine now." "Well, it certainly seems like that's the case." Aubrey and Luna had relieved smiles on their faces as they admired the scene out the window. "Actually, he is not fine, although I am largely the one to blame for that." Luna and Aubrey nearly jumped out of their skin as they heard a new voice play in front of them. Turning around, Aubrey let out a small yelp as Luna felt a lump well up in her throat. Where the fuck was the downside?" "I'm sorry. Why didn't he do this before? She asked. Nyx bit her lower lip uncomfortably as she glanced at Luna, who had been sitting down silently all this time. Evidently, she seemed to have already understood what Mal's change meant for their future. We can't have a child anymore. Can we? It had been so very long since Nyx had felt any kind of heartache or disappointment, and yet seeing the sorrowful look on Luna's face filled her with that oh so terrible emotion. I'm sorry. I truly thought that there was no other way. Luna smiled as she wiped her eye of a single tear that was sliding down her face. It's fine. We wanted to have a child, but I would much rather have him by my side. Thank you for saving the man I love, goddess. A small weight was lifted from Nyx's chest now that she knew Luna was not upset, but she was still worried about how Mal himself would react. Out of the corner of her eye, she glanced at the area where Mal was still located and she felt a bit of anxiety well up in her heart. Girls, do you understand what it is like to love and be loved by an immortal? She asked. Unsurprisingly, the both of them shook their heads, and Nyx chuckled dryly as she took Aubrey's face in her hands. For you, my daughter, you will have the most staunch protector you have ever seen. If you suffer so much as a scratch, the one responsible would cease to exist before your blood hit the ground. Aubrey was largely unconcerned with the second part of Nyx's words and focused entirely on the first. Daughter? Yes, dear. I haven't gotten to get to know you as well as I have your brother, but I hope I get to do so very soon. But I will always consider you my daughter. Aubrey was left with a warm feeling in her chest that she hadn't felt in a long time as Nyx released her face in favor of Luna's. And you, my dear, you are in for an experience unlike anything you can comprehend. Mal's emotions have taken such a large increase in intensity that he will flood you with his love and obsession through every pore in your body. But that also means that he will be extremely dangerous to others when it comes to the four of you. If he should catch another man so much as sniffing around any of you, he will kill him and everyone he's ever come into contact with out of retribution. Handle him carefully. Luna couldn't decide if she was more terrified by that information or intrigued and aroused. But unfortunately, before she could come to a decision, Nyx had decided that her time was up. She reluctantly released Luna from her grasp and began to back away while pointing out the window. He's going to need you right now. It is his first day experiencing heightened emotions and he won't know how to handle himself. Only you girls will be able to pull him out of his misery. Before either of the girls could ask what she meant, Nyx's body started to evaporate right before their eyes. Don't dally now, girls, lest everyone else beat you there. As soon as Nyx disappeared, time started to flow once again and people left their statue-like states. Almost on cue, the beautiful sky overhead lost all of its medley of colors. All that was left behind was a completely black sky that seemed to be utterly devoid of hope or light. If onlookers thought the view was scary before, it was absolutely nothing compared to this nightmarish scene they were seeing now. Luna and Aubrey glanced at each other for only half a second before the two of them got up from their seats and ran out the front doors of the hospital. Without even being called, Shira materialized in front of the girls in her usual massive form and lifted the two of them on her back. Once they were securely on, Shira ran like the wind towards the concentrated negative energy she could feel brewing within the city. Luna looked up at the darkness brewing overhead and she felt unbelievable sadness in her heart. Right now, the man she loved was drowning in sorrow and felt as though his life had no color. She had to do whatever she could to remind him that she was here for him, and that everything would be all right. Outside of the destroyed party venue, Serena, Anna, Bianca, Aisha and Morgan were all standing around, looking at the strangely beautiful night sky up above. The police had just shown up to this location a few minutes ago, and they were in the process of getting statements from the witnesses and offering first aid to any who might need it. Although the number of physical injuries were few, everyone was still visibly shaken up. But once the night returned to the sky, only Malachi's loved ones felt a sense of calm wash over them that wasn't present before. I'm going to find him, Morgan suddenly said. The rest of you should stay here. Naturally, Morgan wasn't expecting to face any resistance to his decision, so he was surprised when he heard the sound of heavy footsteps following him. The gorgeous and tattooed Anna, along with the icy and charming Aisha, immediately followed in Morgan's footsteps. What? are you girls doing? He's my best friend. He's my boyfriend. I understand that, but I don't think that he would want the two of you near a battlefield. I don't always have to give a fuck what he wants. I'll make it up to him later if he's upset. Evidently, the courage of the girls was rather infectious, and now Serena and Bianca were also stepping forward like they wanted to come with him. Girls, Malachi will kill me if anything were to happen to you. Fine, then you don't have to take us, Aisha suddenly said. She calmly walked past Morgan and started walking towards downtown, and the girls immediately followed her. Once Morgan saw that they were really intent on leaving him behind, he quickly ran in front of them to halt their advance. Would you girls wait for just a moment? You cannot. Mr. Morgan, if you're worried about something happening to us, then you should make sure nothing happens to us, right? Serena said. Morgan exhaustedly stared at all five women without having the foggiest idea of how to stop them. Each of them was every bit as determined as the last, and it was clear that he wasn't going to be able to talk them out of it. As a man with two wives whom he loved to pieces, it was easy for him to recognize the look of a woman who was prepared to argue with him even at the cost of her life. It was exhausting just to think about. Fine. You girls keep your legs closed. Anna, what are you? Aisha, what the hell? Bianca, I have a fear of heights. Serena, this is so cool. A bitch is just like Peter Pan. The air became filled with shrill screams as Morgan lifted up the girls and himself via telekinesis and started to ferry them through the air. Evidently, the only ones who seemed to be having fun flying were Anna and Serena, who were even holding their arms out like beautiful birds. I'm glad you're all having fun, but there's something you should know. Luckily that information did seem to reach Malachi by some method or another, but he was still locked within the throes of despair. But she is truly gone and I can't bring her back. Just like I can't bring them back. Aubrey didn't need to ask who exactly her brother was referring to, and her own heart was racked with pain at the mention of her parents whom she loved so dearly. How many times are you going to make me tell you that everything bad that happens isn't your fault? Not with our parents or Shia. Or even what happened to me. Malachi flinched when he heard her words as Aubrey pulled him in for an embrace. I never apologized to you or thanked you. After our parents died, my life just kept getting messier and messier, but you held me together. I wanted to thank you for always taking care of me, and apologize for turning you into the kind of person who feels like they have to be responsible for everything and anyone. Aubrey suddenly grabbed Mal by the face and stared into his featureless void. Tears started falling down her face, but it was unclear whether they were from regret or sadness. All of the bad things that happen to the people around you are not because of you or anything you have done wrong. You can't stop life from happening to us, and we don't expect you to. Just be the person who always helps us forget about it in the end and don't worry about anything else. Within Malachi's dark body, small twinkling stars began to spring up from all over, and the same scene was repeated in the sky above. Aubrey knew that she must have been getting through to him, and she gestured for the rest of the group to come over. When Mal's eyes landed on the tearful Luna, his non-existent heart felt like it was being torn apart once again. He looked down at his own body and remembered the promise he'd made to her that he had inadvertently broken. And not just her, all four of the women in his life were inching closer to him, staring at him with disbelieving faces. It's strange, isn't it? He said as he gestured to his new body. Unsurprisingly, the girls didn't seem to agree in the slightest. Bianca, number. Anna, of course not. I think it's beautiful, honey. Luna, as do I. Malachi laughed dryly just as the girls threw themselves at him, each one trying their best to touch some part of his body. However, Luna was still staring at him face to face, as she knew that he had something to say. I know what I promised you, but I can't. I know, and I'm not upset. As long as you are alive, then nothing else matters to me. That was undoubtedly a weight off his chest, but Malachi was still worried about Anna and Bianca would say. Lucky for him, they seemed to be capable of knowing his thoughts even before he'd voiced them. We're okay with this too, you know, Anna said comfortingly. Nike's already filled us in on everything, so you don't have to worry about us being upset, okay? She did. Bit by bit, Malachi was starting to fully remember the circumstances that led to him ending up in this state. He couldn't say for sure how he felt. It was as if two sides of his mind were at war with each other, one angry at her for taking the choice away and another grateful that she saved his life. He wasn't sure which one was going to win in the end. However, he realized that he was going to have to make a decision very quickly, when Nyx miraculously appeared in front of him yet again. I need the winter to come back. I can't do these heat waves every day. Malachi wasn't sure what to feel when he saw Nyx again. But before he knew what his body was doing, he'd stood up and started walking towards her. Even though Nyx's son now looked a lot more like her, she couldn't bring herself to be happy about it. How could she when she knew that this was literally the opposite of everything that he had wanted? Nevertheless, if she had to do it all over again, she would do it without a second thought. Irregardless of the hopes of the other gods, she had truly come to love Malachi like her own son, and she only wanted the best for him. Even if it was selfish of her, she would never apologize for wanting to keep her son alive. She just had to pray that he wasn't too upset with her. Son. Before Nyx could speak, Malachi wrapped his arms around his mother and pulled her into his arms. His body instinctively moved on its own, and he surprised even himself with his actions. There was a part of him that was surely upset with her for what she had done, but that part was evidently being drowned out by all of the overflowing love he felt for her. He had already lost one mother before, and he didn't want there to be an unnecessary wedge between he and his second one. Life was too short for things like that. Thank you for saving me, he said sincerely. Nyx melted like a young schoolgirl instead of one of the oldest goddesses, and she returned his hug with one of her own. A moment later, she grabbed him by the face and stared up at him with warm eyes full of affection. I have to go soon, so let me see my boy's face one last time. Bit by bit, small particles of what appeared to be dust accumulated onto Malachi's body. A layer of skin was formed right onto the starry mass that made up his being, acting as something of an outer covering. After his body was completely covered, Malachi was back in his normal appearance. Well, almost. For some reason his bright violet irises were now constantly swirling and shifting, and there was a tattooed pair of wings across his back, the same as Joanne had. But the mark in his forehead that signified his pact with Shea was no more. Aubrey, Kaya. I'm traumatized. Traumatized. Aisha, I am going to be sick. Morgan, lag. Please put some clothes on. Serena, wow, Mum. I see why you let him have other girlfriends. There's no way you could have handled all that alone. /Luna/Anna/Bianca, stop looking at it. Serena, I can't help it, it's literally taking up most of my vision. How are any of you even walking? Props finally couldn't handle any more and grabbed her daughter by the bottom lip and covered her eyes. Malachi chuckled as he looked down and realized that he was indeed standing around stark naked. Normally he would have panicked and immediately rushed to cover himself, but for some reason, he didn't really see it like it was a big deal. Nevertheless, he manipulated the shadows at his feet and pulled out the kimono that Luna had given him to cover himself. Oddly enough, Nyx pouted a bit as if she did not understand why he had to cover up. What's wrong? My boy should be proud of his body. He has no equal in the lands above or below this world. Malachi and the girls fell silent for a moment, as they took in Nyx's startling revelation. It certainly sounded serious, but I don't really mind that though. All of a sudden, Nyx felt like she was talking to a group of horny middle schoolers instead of adults in a loving relationship. She took a deep sigh and tried to provide an explanation that would be better received. Turning to the girls, she took Luna and Bianca by the hand as she spoke to each one of them at the same time. Girls, I understand that you have needs, but you have to remember that Malachi is different now. He no longer feels exhaustion like you do. So if he gets too into it, then there's a possibility he won't ever stop. Finally, the girls seemed to see the underlying issue with engaging in lewd acts so casually. Death by coitus was suddenly a very real and scary possibility. I guess it can't be helped then. Anna, hurry up and learn to control yourself already. I'm tired of waiting. Bianca, me too. Luna, I'll have you make up for this later. Aubrey, I am absolutely never fucking coming home again. Malachi ignored his sister as he made up his mind to become in control of his new emotions as quickly as possible. As Mal contemplated how best to learn to control himself, his mother suddenly tapped him on the shoulder, and whispered something into his ear. "By the way, that favor you asked me for? It will be done tonight." Again, Malachi's mood only showed more and more improvement as he felt like a huge burden was lifted from his chest. "Well then, I suppose I should take my leave." Nyx suddenly started to float off the ground, and she waved goodbye to everyone present. Even though this was the first time many people here had met her, they couldn't help but be a little sad to see her go so soon. Perhaps because she sensed that she would blow everyone present a small kiss goodbye as she vanished from the world. A few hours later, Malachi was back in his apartment, his eyes wide open and staring at the ceiling. Surrounding him were all of the sleeping bodies of the women he loved, all snoring peacefully after a long and strenuous night. Not needing to sleep was a really strange thing. Malachi suddenly had so much free time on his hands that he had no real idea what to do with. There was only so much time he could spend robotically scrolling through his phone before he became mind-numbingly bored. Should I finally start trying to beat that Elden game again? Maybe this would be a good time to catch up on schoolwork. Nah, I should write an online novel or something. I want to have sex. Suddenly, Malachi thought of a proper way to use his time and nearly sat up on the bed. He knew what he needed to do, he just needed a quiet place to really focus. And in addition, he didn't want to move and risk waking any of the girls who could be particularly light sleepers. But upon thinking for a moment, he was able to easily come up with a way out of this situation. In an instant, he teleported from his bed and at the same time created a shadowy construct that resembled his body shape and likeness perfectly. Seeing as none of the girls noticed the difference, he knew that he had succeeded in ensuring they stayed asleep. His worries erased, he teleported outside of his room and reappeared outside, floating in the sky. He looked up into the 2 a.m. sky and smiled as his outer shell started falling away. His next destination made up. Couldn't really fathom why, but for some reason her bed didn't really feel as comfortable as it did when she first fell asleep. She tossed and turned hoping to fix her problem without having to open her eyes, but it proved to be to no avail. Eventually, her eyes fluttered open and she realized she was not in her bed at all. "She's awake." A deep, masculine voice reverberated within her ears and she quickly sat up on the cold floor beneath her. Looking up, she found a scene she didn't think she'd ever get to experience. In the Colosseum, rows and rows of divine beings ranging from gods to devils and spirits, were all watching her with looks of clear interest. She was so overwhelmed by the scenery in front of her, her mind had the only natural reaction. She fainted. "My dear, you have to wake up now. This is not a dream." Mother-in-law. "Yes, darling. Come and wake up now, and step into your new life." When Sue opened her eyes again, she was still lying on the floor of a large colosseum. Just like her young boyfriend had described, she was surrounded by rows and rows of higher beings. Some were beautiful, and some were monstrous. But all of them were looking at her with different expressions. Some gazes were disinterested, others were curious, and a few were lustful. Chief among them was Zeus and his brother Poseidon, who were looking at the mature beauty's bountiful assets with no amount of hidden desire. "I will kill you both." The two men heard an eerily cold and familiar voice play within their minds and they immediately knew the source. They could both feel death's scythe hovering above their necks, stemming from one of the 9 thrones above them. In the face of her protection, these mighty gods could do nothing but drop their gazes to the floor. "Speak your name, mortal woman, and tell us the limit of your ambition." Followed the sound of the voice to a falcon-headed man with Nubian skin and elaborate Egyptian robes. Among his pantheon, he and a few select members sat the highest. "Is that a frog?" "I can't do this." Very nearly asked to be sent back home immediately when the familiar voice of her mother-in-law eased her nervous. "Don't let Gex scare you, dear. He's really a silent fellow." "You don't need to be scared, just tell us your ambition. Everything else will work itself out," Nyx explained. I do not understand why I was chosen for this," said honestly. "You were chosen because my son sees something in you and wants you to be able to protect yourself, dear. Your world It is about to become very dangerous soon. You need this. Do not think of giving us some grand reasoning behind your motivations. Just give us the honest answer that dwells within your heart and spirit. Nothing else matters. Felt her chest tighten and she felt her eyes start to spill over. Of course Malaki had asked Nyx to help her be blessed. He was always doing things like that, even without being asked. She had never been with someone who was always so willing to go above and beyond for her, no matter the cost. It left her feeling so grateful for his love that she often didn't know what to do. But if she had an opportunity to do something in the future, she had to take this gift now. Once she made up her mind, her words flowed out of her mouth easily, containing no sense of dishonesty or subterfuge. I don't have any ambition, but the man I love is the kind of person who wants to bear the weight of the world on his shoulders. All I want is to bring him comfort and peace, no matter what he may be going through. It may sound like a small goal, but I've never thought of myself as much of a fighter, and I don't really believe that part of me will change anytime soon. But if I can help to support the one who defends me with everything he has, then I believe I can find my value in that. After Siz's declaration, the Hyers murmured amongst themselves for a few moments. Unsurprisingly, Siz's words had the largest impacts over the deities of love and marriage, and they became determined to take her as their chosen. Honestly, how could a love as pure as hers still exist in today's day and age? Everything she said was just so touching that she had practically moved these gods to tears. I see. That's certainly a fine ideal, Ra said. Who among us desires to bless this woman? Unsurprisingly, had quite a few offers from the aforementioned gods of love and marriage. From Eros to Freya, and even Hera, they were all clamoring to have her. Make your choice now, daughter of man, Odin said. Which deity would you have bless you? Hemra inadvertently turned the armrests on her stone throne to dust, earning a round of dry laughter from Nyx. Really, how funny. Now that had been blessed, her body started to break apart as she returned back to her bedroom. With her last remaining seconds she looked up at Nyx and showed her a smile filled with gratitude. Thank you, mother-in-law. I will not waste the opportunity you have given me. What a silly girl. Just work on making yourself and my son happy, all right? Yes, Mom. I will do my best. Once she disappeared, silence returned to the Colosseum once more as Zeus ran his hands through his white hair. Right then, has anyone else had their eye on any more chosen? He asked. I have, as have I. Same here. When the gods in attendance looked at the three who had spoken, they knew that their night was only going to get much more interesting from here. Alright. Let us summon the next one then. Well, it happened and it was only half as exhausting as I thought it would be. Kinda feel like I need a real long nap and a glass of hard liquor. For some reason, Aubrey was having a really hard time sleeping. Perhaps it was due to everything that happened tonight, but she just couldn't seem to relax even with her girlfriend's arms wrapped around her. Her body was falling asleep in weird intervals due to exhaustion. She would close her eyes for around 5 minutes, and then wake up immediately and see that it was still dark outside. If she hadn't had so much on her mind, she would have been dreaming peacefully by now about any number of silly little things. But unfortunately, she was having no such luck. Her eyelids became too heavy to keep open once again, and it became time for her regularly scheduled cat nap. However, when she opened her eyes again, she felt entirely different. There was no longer a blanket covering her body and she felt like she was lying on a stone floor. It had been so many years since she had slept so roughly that she had thrown herself out of bed, so her embarrassment level was at an all-time high. Opening her eyes, she realized that there was far too much light in the room. And this was most certainly not her girlfriend's mansion. She has awakened. A jolt ran through her spine when she heard a masculine voice that was surely new to her. She briefly considered that she had been kidnapped by that same shadowy organization from earlier and her heart started beating uncontrollably. Aubrey, my darling daughter, don't be scared. No one is going to hurt you here. On the contrary, we just want to help you. Help me? Help me how? How do you think, my dear? We want to bless you. Aubrey expertly picked out the voice in her head from the crowd of gods in the stands. Once she made eye contact with Nyx, the goddess flashed her a small wink to put her mind at ease. For some strange reason, Everyone here was staring at Aubrey like they already knew her. Even though she wasn't famous by any sort of metric, they were looking at her like she was some kind of religious figure. Sister to the fabled sun. Tell us the limits of your ambition. The one who finally addressed Aubrey was a horned and hairy beast that sat high among the Chinese pantheon. Pang Wu seemed to be staring at the young girl rather intently, just like all of the others, though she wasn't sure if it was because he wanted to eat her or not. My ambition. Aubrey had heard from both her girlfriend and brother about this part of the ritual, but she still was not ever expecting to ever be asked this question herself. She honestly wasn't sure if she had any ambition. The way that her life was set up now, her brother and girlfriend gave her everything she could ever want. Malachi even gave her a few million once he signed with Luna, so she was already pretty wealthy despite never even finishing high school. It was hard to answer what your ambition was when everything was done for you by your loved ones. Aubrey wasn't ungrateful or spoiled, but things had been this way for so long that she had never stopped to question it. But in thinking about these things for the first time, she realized what the answer to the question that Pang Wu had asked her a few moments ago. My ambition is, I want to be someone who can stand on their own 2 feet again, she said with great difficulty. My brother and girlfriend, they tend to coddle me a lot because of my past. I'm grateful that they love me so much, but I think I want to do things for myself again. I want to protect myself so that they don't have to feel obligated to do it for me. I want to be able to walk on the street again, even if they aren't holding my hand. I want to be someone who can stand beside those 2 amazing people proudly. My ambition is that I want to be strong and independent. With every word that she spoke, Aubrey's words flowed easier and easier. It made her realize how deeply buried this wish was, and just how long she had been suppressing this desire inside. Such powerful words. My daughter, your brother would be proud, as am I, Nyx said warmly. Even though Aubrey and the goddess had yet to build a proper bond of any kind, it would be a lie if she said that she did not feel anything when this woman referred to her as her child. It was a very warm and pleasant feeling. So much so that it gave her flashbacks to her birth mother and father. She missed them so very terribly. But just like her brother, she had to keep living with their memories and lessons ingrained into her being every day. Now then, who will bless my child? Nyx asked. The casual way that Nyx referred to Aubrey set off a chain reaction inside the minds of the Hyers. Previously, everyone was looking at Aubrey like they could not wait to offer her their blessing. With her brother's immense potential, surely she would not be very far behind him, right? They may have missed their opportunity with him, but this was their chance to correct that with his sibling. But Nyx's interference was a not so veiled way of saying that any intentions had to be pure, or they would be punished immediately. That dissuaded most of the demons and powerful monsters from trying to bless her. Their power tended to corrupt, and 98% of the humans blessed by them were now sitting in the underwater prison Tartarus or dead. But as for those who did not have any impunitives, Aubrey was fair game, and they lobbied for her like she was prime real estate. Daughter of man, accept my blessing. No, mine. The fuck do you need a wine god's blessing for? Kill yourself, Apollo. Watch your mouth or I'll fuck your wife, Dionysus. Aubrey was being solicited by so many Hyers that her head was beginning to hurt. She didn't know how she was ever going to come to a decision with all of these Hyers yelling at her like this. This is more annoying than they mentioned, Aubrey thought exhaustedly. Foo, don't worry, dear. Help is on the way. If she had, she would have liked to have done it intentionally, but all she did was mutter a few words. Oh, right, she realized. She gestured for Thanatos to lean down so that she could whisper something in his ear, and he looked at her strangely before obliging. I don't feel that fullness thing that my brother and girlfriend talked about, so does that mean I have to pick again? Today, Aubrey learned that in a room filled with higher beings, it should not have come as a surprise that they all had super hearing. This time, the common was even louder than the first. She's fine. She is like her brother. She can handle more. Young girl, please allow me to give you my blessing. Aubrey had specifically chosen to whisper in the hopes of avoiding this exact situation, but it appeared to have been useless in the end. In the blink of an eye, 2 more gods appeared in front of the young saint girl. One was a large, green-skinned Anna with white and red hair and the face of a hungry ogre. The other was a beautiful woman with richly tanned skin and dark black hair. Her golden eyes were warm and gentle, like pools of warm honey. Mortal, I am Fujin, the god of wind. Together we can outshine both of our brothers. And young lady, I am Isis, goddess of magic and healing. I believe that if you accept my blessing, then I'll take both. I'll take both. I just want to go home now, Aubrey cried. The two gods blinked their eyes several times before smiling at each other widely and undergoing the ritual. In the thrones above, Nyx was sitting on her throne wearing her usual warm and motherly smile as she watched Aubrey do just as her brother had, accept blessings from different pantheons. It was like she was watching her child win some kind of award in school or bring home a straight A report card. She honestly couldn't remember the last time she felt this proud. Honestly, my children are so special, bro. I was riding around with my girl and her best friend all day and I just checked my bank account. I've been laying on the floor for the past 20 minutes, trying to pray that money back into my pocket by the time I wake up. Inhales. Let's fucking go. The hires looking at the newest mortal to be blessed weren't really sure what to think. This one clearly had a few screws loose, and that was really saying something when it came from those among them who were dubbed as mad themselves. She's interesting. She's a little touched. Bless her heart. Hey, I can hear you, Serena yelled. Honestly, how could these people bring her here and still proceed to be so rude? They were treating her like she was slow. Was it wrong of her to be excited that she was about to receive superpowers? When she showed up here a few seconds ago, she couldn't help but be so overjoyed that she yelled from the depths of her lungs. Could anyone blame her? Apologies, daughter of man. Your personality is simply rather surprising. Serena made eye contact with an old man with two crows sitting on his shoulders and one missing eye. She wasn't certain about who exactly this guy was, but he looked important, so she decided to accept his apology and just keep it moving. Tell us then, child. What is the limit of your ambition? Serena really only needed a moment to think about an answer, as she had been dreaming about this day for as long as she could imagine. She took a deep breath before declaring her ambition from the very top of her lungs. I want to be the strongest and the most beautiful blessed woman on the face of the earth. I want to be so hot that guys scream their jeans just from looking at me, and I want to be rich as fuck too. Oh, and if it's not too much to ask for, then I also want an ass that wiggles like my mama's. In all of the time that the hire had been blessing mortals, they had never heard anything like this before. Her reasons were so ridiculously mortal that it was laughable. And against Serena's expectations, the bulk of them did. Ha 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 ha. She's a funny one indeed. Hey, tell us your ambition again. I haven't had a laugh like this in centuries. Serena started to pout as nearly every hire within this place laughed so hard that they fell out of their seats. The hell's so funny? I don't think I made any kind of Joe the hell, she says. An unfairly handsome man who many of the hire would recognize as Lucifer, was laughing at the young girl harder than anyone else. Damn it. What is wrong with my ambition? She finally yelled. Her unexpected outburst caused the laughter of the gods to die down a bit, and they were all giving her a look of true pity. Child, that is not ambition. Hera said. Your desires are superficial at best. The things you want will have no long-term meaning in there. Does that mean that I cannot say hello? She's just such a fun character that I couldn't help but be intrigued. Be intrigued from your seat like the rest of us. Mind your business. Oh. Hello. Are you going to bless me? Lucifer and the Michael stopped arguing long enough to find Serena engaging in conversation with a pretty woman. She had beautiful and fair skin, with long auburn hair and dark black eyes. The two brothers could not help but look at the Greek goddess of the night once again, as yet another one of her children had appeared during the night. Indeed I am, if you find me worthy of it, the goddess said. What's your name? I am Apat, the goddess of deceit. Serena's eyes went wide and she let out a low, impressed whistle. Pretty edgy. Apat wasn't really sure if she should take that as a compliment or not, but she continued on with her conversation nonetheless. Hey, wait. Lucifer began. I, Apat, goddess of deceit, wish to bestow my blessing onto you, Serena Ehara. Will you accept? Lucifer, I said. Sure thing. I can't wait to be able to kick Mal's ass the next time he calls me a stiff booty bitau. It took a moment, but Serena soon felt a strange invading force entering her mind. No one told her about the annoying headache that came from being blessed, or else she probably would have had more reservations about agreeing so easily. But a few moments later, the feeling passed and she started to feel better than ever. This is great. Before Apat knew what was happening, Serena flung herself at the goddess and hugged her tightly. Thank you, Apat. I promise I won't let you down, and I'm also gonna go home and study up on all of your legends so that I'll know who you are. For the first time in a long time, the goddess felt compelled to hit a mortal. But for some reason, she had to admit that the girl in front of her was oddly likable. She was almost glad that her mother had asked her to do this. After Serena disappeared, Michael and Lucifer both stared hard at Nyx. The goddess naturally felt their gazes, but she felt no real need to explain her motives. After all, everything that she did was for her beloved son and his loved ones. Christ. Yes, no, I mean God the gods. Which one? No, none of you. Why am I here? Anna was more than a little uncomfortable with this turn of events. She woke up thinking that she had to pee and prepared to crawl out of bed, only to realize that she was in some kind of weird coliseum, surrounded by more beings of legend than she could count. But for some reason, no one was looking at her and instead staring at one amongst themselves. Problem? Nyx asked annoyedly. Why don't we just skip the declaration of ambition and just get to the part where you have one of your children bless the mortal? It's not like the rest of us have an opportunity anyway. I just want to go back to my realm and lie down. Anna nearly jumped out of her skin when the woman who was sitting on a throne above her suddenly appeared right beside her. This was only her second time meeting her, but even she was able to recognize Mal's adoptive mother. Hello Anna, it's nice to finally get to speak with you properly. Why yay, nice to meet you too. Foo, don't be nervous. Nyx gently took Anna by the hands and admired the tattoos on her knuckles and arms. Such exquisite artwork. They are always so beautiful no matter how many times I see them. Thank you for saying so, Anna said shyly. She wasn't really good with mother figures since she never had one of her own. As a result, it was relatively easy to disarm her usual prickly and unfriendly nature as long as you used an older woman to do it. In that regard, she was quite a bit similar to her boyfriend. Tell me something, Annalise. Nyx ran her cool fingers along Anna's cheeks as she looked at her with gentle black eyes. What is your ambition, dear? What kind of person do you want to be? Surprisingly, it wasn't hard for her to think of an answer as she had always known it for as long as she'd been an adult. I just think that I would like to be someone new. Oh? And why is that, sweetie? Annalise had never said these words out loud to anyone before, and yet here she was about to spill her deepest insecurities to her boyfriend's mother. Life was funny like that. Can you keep a secret? Of course dear, my lips are sealed. I've done a lot of bad shit. I spent a few years in juvie for pretty much everything: fighting, breaking and entering, possession with intent, and she didn't bother to finish, and Nyx didn't press her for more answers. The goddess could tell that what she'd already gotten to hear required a great deal of effort. I cleaned up a lot since then, you know. But even when I turned 18, I was still hurting myself by getting into bad relationships with guys and drinking until I blacked out. I put my uncle through hell, but for some reason he never scolded me for anything and just kept picking me up every time that I fell down. I owe him so much. Anna couldn't tell, but Nyx silently put up a barrier to keep her words from reaching any of the other hires from hearing her very personal confession. Dating your son is like a real breath of fresh air for me. He's so gentle, and he makes me feel like I'm the most special girl in the world even though I'm just some orphan with a record. I'm happier than I've ever been, but I'm also terrified out of my mind that he is going to find out about all the shit I used to pull and look at me differently because of it. So why? Anna was nearly midway through a very moving confessional when Nyx suddenly picked her cheeks and started to pull them like they were made of taffy. Nope, don't do that. If you're going to say that you love Malachi, then you need to be aware of the kind of person he is. I am the goddess of retribution. Destructive anger and a spirit of vengeance are the gifts I will give. Become my agent, and relinquish your dark past as you cleanse the world of the irredeemables. Anna's eyes went slightly wide as the gravity of what she was being offered sank in. Nemesis was basically asking her to become some kind of supernatural huntress who punished criminals by bringing death. It was a crazy offer and she wasn't even sure that she should take it. But suddenly she remembered the words of her mother-in-law. Nyx had specifically picked this goddess for her because she believed that her blessing would be best suited for Anna. And when Anna recalled her own words about wanting to be redeemed, it wasn't really hard to see why. So really, why was she still hesitating? "I accept your blessing then." Anna wasn't exactly sure if she was supposed to bow in this instance, but she felt like it would be rude if she didn't at least lower her head a bit. She felt a warm sensations spread through every corner of her mind and body. It was invigorating, welcoming, and it felt so right that she couldn't believe that she'd ever been without it. "Thanks for this. It's really amazing," she admitted. Nemesis was always rather stoic and remained stone-faced even in front of Anna's sincere gratitude. "You need not thank me, since it was your choice to take it. But know this, blessed daughter, should you prove unworthy, I will reclaim my blessing at the expense of your life if I must." Anna couldn't focus too much on Nemesis' warning because she was so focused on the way she had referred to her. "Blessed daughter." She didn't say it with any sort of warmth or affection, so she couldn't have been proclaiming herself to be her mother. And that left only one possible alternative. "Wait a second. Do you know who my—" "It seems our time is up." W8. Before Annalise could get the answer that she wanted, her body started to break apart and she vanished from the Colosseum. After she left, Nemesis felt a small but sharp poke in her side and found her mother with a cute yet displeased expression. Even before she said anything, Nemesis had already lost her constantly stoic demeanor and was trying to apologize. It was just a slip of the tongue. You know, I would never reveal to that girl anything about her parentage or her mother's relationship with my brother." For some reason, Nyx still seemed to be unsatisfied. "If you know what you've done wrong, then how should you apologize?" Nemesis' face became as red as her dress as she glanced at the numerous divine beings around them. "Do I have to do it here?" "Yes." Finally, Nemesis decided to bite the bullet and swallowed her embarrassment and displeasure. She kissed Nyx on the cheek so quickly that you could barely even see it, and said the dreaded words of apology. "I am sorry, Mommy." "Foo-fa-foo, good. My sweet girl is forgiven." The hires surrounding them were immediately able to come to one undeniable conclusion. This entire family was completely mad. If one had a powerful enough telescope, they would be amazed by the sight they could observe in this moment. Located on the dark side of the moon, there was a single, black cat curled up with its eyes closed. The animal seemed to have no problem breathing, nor was it succumbing to the unbearable cold temperatures out in space. It was as if it was right at home here in complete darkness and silence. After several hours of sitting here, the fluffy animal opened its violet eyes and let out a small sigh. "I feel all right, but got no way to tell if I'm stable or not." Malachi had been meditating for a while now and he had no real way to examine the fruits of his labor. He wouldn't really know if he was fully in control of his emotions until he was put into a situation that would test him. Though who knew when that would be? He left his feline form and returned to his true body, a mass of darkness, stars, and nebulas in the shape of a man. He ran his hands through his dreadlocks and watched as they floated around him like they had their own mind. Glancing at the earth, he could tell that the sun was likely about to come up in the US in around 30 minutes or so. "I should probably head back before my girls." Before Mal could finish his thought, he felt like a thread was cut within his mind. Instinctively he knew exactly what that meant and he chuckled wryly in defeat. "Guess I've already been up here too long." When Malachi reappeared in the bedroom in his apartment, he found a scene that he was already somewhat expecting. All four of his girlfriends were awake and conscious, glaring at him with irritated faces. Bianca held his shadowy construct by the neck with a fiery fist and looked like she was about to put it out of its misery. You left us, spouted, and then replaced yourself with this cheap construct, added Luna. Mal rubbed his skin and flashed the girls an apologetic smile in the hopes of alleviating their displeasure. I was trying to get my new emotions under control so that I could control myself with you girls. Or are you telling me you don't miss having sex? The two women immediately forgot about their frustrations as Mal climbed into the bed with them. He grabbed Anna and S first and pulled the two girls close into his body. You girls. You're gorgeous. After being blessed, both S and Anna had their bodies altered. While there weren't drastic physical changes, the quality of their bodies had undergone a noticeable elevation. Both could easily pass for top models anywhere in the world. S, you don't seem very surprised that we got blessed. Anna, I guess you really did have something to do with it. Malachi nodded slowly as he let his hands roam freely across the bodies of the two girls. The world's about to get real dangerous sooner or later. I need you girls to always be safe and capable of holding your own. The girls had to admit, they felt rather moved that Malachi's interest was on strengthening them instead of protecting them. Most men would have let an inflated ego get to their head and thought that they were all that was needed to keep their women safe. But Mal didn't want to lock them in some sort of glass cage and instead found a way to help them stand on their own. Even without him. It was an incredibly mature and kind-hearted gesture. So, wanna tell me about whose blessings you girls got? Mal flopped onto the center of the bed and held out his arms. All four girls wasted no time in getting as close as they could and resting while the sun was still down. They talked about their experiences with Hypnos and Nemesis, as well as first impressions and curiosity over their new powers and bodies. As the more senior blessed, Malachi, Bianca and Luna answered all the girls' questions to the best of their abilities. Does this mean that I sign with Immortal Moon too now? S asked. I don't mind training and all that stuff, but getting up early to do it is a serious no, warned Anna. The questions of the girls brought up a point that he'd also wanted to bring up but wasn't sure how. Actually girls, I think that you both should. Don't be sad bro, I'll loan you a few million if you need it. You're lucky I don't need to eat anymore or I'd have you take me to dinner overnight until your money runs out. Don't be silly, you'll die before my money runs out. She gloated. I'm immortal now. Exactly. Malachi rolled his eyes and nearly offered a retort, when he suddenly heard footsteps coming from down the hallway. Bang! As soon as he noticed her approach, Serena came bursting through the door to his room. Literally. She was new to her powers, and as a result she couldn't control her new strength and knocked his door clean off the hinges. However, she seemed to be too excited over what she had to tell them to really care. Guys, guess what? Your girl got blessed, and the goddess even gave me a cute little booty just like I asked for. As a demonstration, Serena whirled around the room in her very small black shorts that were barely keeping both of her cheeks inside. Serena, I'm glad you're happy but can you please stop? S yelled with a red face. At that moment, she wanted her daughter to stop embarrassing herself so badly that she ended up using her own powers. A pulse of silver energy left her body and struck everyone in the room. Before they knew what was happening, their entire body began to feel terribly heavy and comfortable. Even Malachi was not immune. He never thought that he would experience this feeling of drowsiness ever again in his life, but now it was back and stronger than ever. Malachi, what the hell? Bianca, sleepy. Anna, I knew I wasn't a morning person. Luna, I think we can skip training this morning. Serena, dancing made me tired. Swatched in horror as everyone around her closed her eyes and fell straight to sleep. Serena suffered the worst fate as she wasn't in a bed and had no choice but to face plant on the ground, snoring rather loudly. If she had still been human, she would have easily broken her nose. Oops. What happened? I can't see anything, Aubrey yelled. Picked up Mal's dropped phone and shyly explained the current events. I accidentally put everyone to sleep with my blessing. Oh, cool. Do you know how you did it? No, of course not. She looked to her side and Mal snoring lightly while his face was side by side with Bianca's. It was clear that he was okay, and he even seemed to be sleeping more peacefully than she had ever seen. Her feelings of concern and embarrassment quickly gave way for ones of pride. She had always wanted nothing more than to bring the man she loved peace, and it seemed like she had finally done that. Her first day with her new abilities was already one of the best of her life. Good night, honey. Sweet dreams. Malachi awoke to the sensation of soft and gentle hands on his face. Even if he couldn't hear the soft humming coming from beside him, he would still know the culprit behind this gentle assault. Oh, seems like you woke up first, honey. Malachi opened his eyes and found lying on the bed beside him, a clearly pleased smile on her face. I could feel it when you started to wake up, and I can even tell how long it'll take for the others to wake up too. To prove her point, excitedly pointed to the foot of the bed and waited for around 3 seconds. Exactly at that interval, Serena popped up from the ground, clearly delirious, with her pink hair strewn all over her face. Her eyes were still half closed, and it was clear that she had no recollection of how she'd gotten here. Mama, Mal, why am I on the floor? You were sleepwalking and broke our door down doing it. Serena followed Mal's finger all the way to the destroyed door on the left side of the room that she had so casually ran through. That doesn't seem like something I do. Serena followed Mal's finger all the way to the destroyed door on the left side of the room that she had so casually ran through. That doesn't seem like something I do. Yes it does. Arg. Whatever. Serena finally picked herself off the ground and proudly put her hands on her hips. I've got powers now, and soon I'm going to be even more famous than you, Mal. As a way to demonstrate her new powers, Serena held out her hands and lifted up the blanket covering everyone with her mind. Although, she quickly realized that she would have been better off showcasing her powers in a different manner. Oh come on. Why are you always naked? This time is on you. Man, nobody told you to come in here and rip the blanket off me like that. Mal defended. Serena rolled her eyes as she put the blanket back on top of the bodies lying in bed. However, the 3 sleeping girls had finally stirred awake from all the noise. Hey, wait a damn minute. Why do all of you guys look more hot than usual? Malachi got the 3 reactions that he just about expected. He was only making a suggestion. But if Serena wanted to do the opposite then that was her choice. He would protect her regardless anyways. Is there an open training room at this time? The white-haired beauty checked her phone for a few minutes before nodding in confirmation. You want to start already? Why not? No time like the present. Malachi sat up on the bed with Anna in his lap and smiled at the group of girls. Alright ladies, you feel up for a field trip? Serena, I hate training. This is actually kind of fun. Anna, my body's really sore. Babe, would it be too much to ask for a massage? Aubrey, this magic thing is tricky. In a pristine white training room at Immortal Moon, 4 figures could be seen sprawled out across the floor. It was now 11 a.m., and the girls had been practicing with their new powers for around 3 hours. On the physical spectrum, they were all top-quality recruits. Their physical strength, endurance, and speed were all in the S2 range. But their physical properties aside, their individual powers were what made them real monsters. As already shown, S had the ability to put beings to sleep. She could do this through her presence, actions or words, and as of now she did not seem to have a limit on the amount of beings she could do this to. On average, beings she knocks out stay unconscious for an hour or 2 unless she chooses to wake them ahead of schedule. In theory, she can put someone into a coma that they can never wake up from, but she described such a thing as incredibly taxing and mean-spirited. Her daughter Serena was also rather special. She had been given the power of illusions. She could influence the minds of beings to make them see, hear, and even feel things that weren't there. In addition, she could secrete a pink mist from the pores on her body that she could manipulate into solid illusions. However, her constructs could easily be destroyed with a hard smack and she had trouble influencing stronger minds. Anna's blessing was also rather unique. Nemesis blessing gave her the power of kinetic energy absorption. Every time she received so much as a high five, she absorbed the energy into her body and held it in her tattoos. Coincidentally, they had only discovered this because Mel smacked her on the butt once as she walked by. They were calling it a happy accident. When all of her tattoos were lit up brightly, she was fully charged and couldn't handle any more energy without feeling like she'd eaten too much at a buffet. But once she had absorbed the energy, she could use it for multiple purposes: energy projection, physical empowerment, and even imbuing it into other objects to create something much like a bomb. Coincidentally, she could also do something similar to Malaki and judge a person's soul to find out if they were good or bad. She had only run into good people so far, so there were no problems, but she couldn't help but wonder about what would happen if she ran into someone bad. Even though the girls had strong showings, Aubrey had done the least and still seemed to be the most impressive. Due to her worries over Thanatos' blessing, she hadn't even tried to use it. Her blessing from Isis was amazing, but it was also difficult. She didn't know the first thing about using magic, or how to use it. The most she was able to do was use it to close up a small cut that had gotten on her arm. But her blessing from Fujin was another story entirely. She seemed to be a natural with the power of the wind, and by training's end she was even creating miniature tornadoes and sending them running all through the room. In addition, she could also summon a white and fluffy cloud to ride on just like the wind god himself. The highlight of her day was gathering up all of the girls and flying around the training room like a kind of mythological taxi service. After a fun and rigorous first day of training, the girls had all collapsed on the ground, equally sweaty and out of breath. On the wall, Luna, Bianca, Malaki, and Aisha had been watching their entire performance from start to finish without blinking even once. The guildmaster in particular was more shocked than anyone. So much talent in one room. The prestige of her guild could shoot up to an astronomical degree. If they were not so concerned with hiding their new abilities, she would have already signed them all without waiting for a press release. They're really incredible. I wasn't expecting them to have such talent with their powers. I wonder how much they'll be able to do once they've practiced a bit more and expanded their potential," said Bianca. The two girls noticed that their area was rather quiet and quickly looked to their left. They found Malaki and Aisha, standing side by side with their eyes glued to the bodies of their respective girlfriends. It wasn't their fault, but really, when the woman you love is all sweaty and wearing tight gym clothes in front of you, how can you possibly be expected to focus on anything else? Are you two listening to us? Luna asked exhaustedly. Sorry, did we miss something? At times like this, it was really easy to see how the two of them had become best friends. Malaki stepped out of his car and took a deep breath before he started crossing the parking lot. Even though he no longer had internal organs, his stomach felt like it was in knots. It seemed like every time he had come to the hospital, something unfortunate had occurred or followed closely after. For once, he just wanted to have a normal visit without anything unnecessary happening. And as he moved past the front desk and through the building, it seems like he was going to get his wish. One of the results of Arya's reveal was finally starting to show itself. People were going out of their way to avoid him, and some were giving him looks of suspicion. He didn't really mind this, as it wasn't like anyone was stopping him to take pictures or sign any autographs. Although there were a few kids who looked like they wanted to come up and speak to him, they were inevitably held back by their mothers. He was used to being stared at, but this was a much more unsettling experience than normal. What? No gift? You're such a cheap bastard. Malaki had been in such a deep state of thought that he hadn't been paying much attention to his footsteps and as a result, had already reached Rowan's hospital room. Evidently, Mal was not the first person to stop by and visit, as the old man's room was already filled with get well soon memorabilia. The girls at the guild brought you all this? Of course they did, because they're sweet grateful angels and you're a penny pincher who couldn't even be bothered to spring for a card. Malaki chuckled as he held out his hand and a card came floating out of the shadows at his feet, along with a carton of cigarettes. I take back everything I said, I couldn't ask for a better grandson. Like I thought. Malaki passed the old man his gifts and took a minute to fully observe him for the first time. The old man's chest was heavily bandaged, along with some signs of sleep deprivation around his eyes, and his cheeks were slightly sullen. You look tired. I'm old. The two go hand in hand. Malaki knew that Rowan was trying to play his injury off as a minor scrape, but he didn't have a chance at fooling him. Oh yay, and I'm sure it's got nothing to do with that near-death experience you had. Kid, why can't you ever just overlook nasty little incidents like these? Why do you have to dwell on them? Rowan, you were almost on a t-shirt. How do you expect me to overlook that? Easy, just think of all the good that would have come from my death. Do you know how delicious the grub at a funeral is? The grief does something to your palate, I swear. Malachi was trying really hard to remain upset, but Rowan's stupid jokes were admittedly wearing down his resolve. At the end of the day, I am still breathing, so let's try not to dwell on the negative too much. Whatever you say, old man. What? You actually listened to me? Have I actually ascended already? Malachi rolled his eyes and took a seat as the old man laughed at his own unfunny jokes. In truth, Rowan's attitude over almost being killed was much less cavalier than he was showing. He just didn't want Malachi to run off thinking that he had to avenge him. After everything that occurred with Arthur Rowan, the old man knew full well that Mal had a bit of a tendency to settle grievances in very violent manners. He didn't want to be responsible for further staining this young man's soul. Not anymore. Malachi and Rowan spent a lot of time talking after that. Since the old man clearly wanted to keep the conversation light, that was what they did. For nearly 2 hours, the two of them talked about seemingly everything but the elephant in the room. Instead they cracked jokes, talked about the blessings Mal had gotten for the girls, and even the old man's interest in his middle-aged night nurse. It was a good time, but in the back of his mind Malachi's focus was solely on finding Arias and the making him pay for this. Everything about him had been heightened after he became his mother's avatar, and his desire to always pay back slights was not an exception. However, it seemed like his meditation on the moon had paid off, if only just a bit. Even though he was simmering with murderous rage, his cheerful and giddy smile never left his face. Day by day, he was becoming more and more of a frighteningly unstable being. And when there finally came a need to expose his true self, may the gods have mercy on the unfortunate soul who experienced it firsthand. I'm bricked up. Damn, they look good. Serena put on an aloof demeanor without even bothering to look up from her phone. How the hell should I know? It's not like Oh, sorry. Not you. I was talking to your friend. Yay, that's what they all. Wait, what? Serena finally looked up and realized that the guy really wasn't looking at her, he was staring at Anna. So far, no one had bothered to approach her since they'd been sitting here. After all, she was on camera with Malachi as his date at the Immortal Moon Gala, so practically everyone on campus knew they were together. Except this guy apparently. Serena immediately lost her icy demeanor as she let out a disappointed sigh. She has a boyfriend, don't bother. She might want another one. The guy seemed to be unflinchingly confident, and he was not at all dissuaded by the mention that there was another man in her life. After that, there was little that Serena could do to avoid a confrontation. Anna finally looked up at her would-be suitor and he was delighted to learn that she was even more beautiful than he thought. Hey, Anna didn't even bother to listen to the guy's name and instead spit directly into his face. She then proceeded to turn her music all the way back up, and act like absolutely nothing had happened. What the fuck is wrong with you? Clearly unwanted, the young man stormed off while fuming as he wiped Anna's DNA off his face. For some reason, his entire vibe gave Serena a rather strange and icky feeling, and she started to think that maybe standing around like this wasn't the best idea. You couldn't have rejected him more politely? She asked in exhaustion. No, Christ. In retrospect, he had actually gotten off pretty easily. Had Anna decided to hit him, she would have likely killed him in a single hit. Ding. While changing songs on her phone, Anna received a text from her uncle and only family. At first glance, she thought he may have been about to call her in for work later and she let out an audible groan. But much to her surprise, it wasn't anything like that. PG, hey kiddo, would you mind coming by the house after your class is over? Got something I wanna talk to you about. When Malachi arrived, he found Anna and Serena standing side by side in the parking lot. But of course, there were a swarm of flies buzzing around them. Malachi slipped through the group while uncaring of the men he bumped into and kissed Anna possessively. Geez, you sappy fucks just saw each other a few hours ago, how can you possibly miss her that much? Serena was seeing so much PDA every day that she was practically sick of it. What the hell was so fun about kissing and shit anyway? Malachi released Anna's lips and interlocked their hands together possessively. You look good. Anyone bothering you? If I said yes, what would you do? Tear their heads off. What else? Suddenly the space that it was swarming with guys before was cleared out in a matter of seconds. I feel like I need an insulin shot. Serena grabbed her bag and started to leave the cute couple behind when Malaki suddenly placed her hand on her shoulder. You little junkie. You think I wouldn't notice you had my shades on? Well, why you don't really wear them anymore, so what's the harm? Huh? Malaki plucked his glasses of Serena's face without even bothering to hear her flimsy reasoning. Hey, why? Ignoring her, Mal turned around and placed them onto Anna's face instead, enhancing her beauty even further. How do I look, babe? She asked. Malaki didn't respond and instead pulled out his phone and started taking pictures of Anna like she was some kind of runway model. Anna, are you going to use those to beat off when I'm at work? Malaki, you know me so well. Serena, I am going to be fucking sick. The trio resumed their walk to class and Mal finally got a chance to talk to give the girls an update on Rowan's condition. The girls also decided that it would be best to go see him as well, and Anna finally remembered the strange text that she'd gotten from her uncle. Are you free after class, babe? I was hoping that you could take me to my uncle's place. Did you think that you would be giving me a better life, or could you just not be bothered to be a mother? In all of the time that Mal had known Anna, he had never seen her this emotional. Not even when she was seconds away from dying. She was trembling within his arms, and clenching her hands so hard that the sound of her knuckles cracking was audible. I wanted to try. You have no idea how badly I wanted to stay with you, but I was just such a mess and you were so innocent and pure that I didn't want to ruin you. How would you have ruined me? By driving me to school? Watching a few stupid-ass cartoons with me on Saturday morning? Was that too much for you? I wasn't a healthy person back then, Anna. I could never have been what you needed me to be, and I'm sorry. Fuck you're sorry. You abandoned me. Malaki wanted to stop this somehow, but he wasn't even sure of what side to take. Anna's feelings were justified, as was her reaction. She was only a little girl, and she had to grow up with no mother or father to support and love her the way she always deserved. On the other hand, Malaki also felt bad for Joanne. She truly thought she was doing the best thing for Anna by leaving her with her uncle, and the fear that Anna would hate her for her decision had kept her away all these years. It was selfish. It was cowardly. But it was also human, and for that reason Mal couldn't bring himself to hate Joanne for the things she had done. Joanne swallowed her nerves as she tried to calm her rapidly beating heartbeat and this foreboding sense of dread within her body. She had prepared herself for her daughter's wrath, but now that it was here, it was worse than she had imagined. But she had no choice but to endure it. After all, this was her bed and now she had to lie in it. She had run away from her daughter before, and she would never do it again. Anna, I may not have been around, but I have never abandoned you for even a single second. I watched you at all your soccer games. I opened up a bank account for you. I even pulled some strings to get you out of juvenile hall a year early. I don't say these things because I want to throw them in your face, or because I'm seeking some kind of validation. I'm only telling you this because I earnestly want you to know that I have always loved you and been beside you, even if I couldn't be beside you. Anna wasn't so mad that she couldn't understand her mother's words or notice her sincerity, but she wasn't so easily moved. She couldn't be. This woman had brought her 22 years worth of heartache and she wouldn't give her absolution with one simple apology. However, it did make her think of something. That accident I got in 2 years ago. They told me they were having trouble finding blood for me because I'm AB negative, but then some mysterious donor showed up and gave that day. That was you, wasn't it? Joanne wiped her face of tears and nodded slowly, confirming what Anna already knew to be true. Now, she didn't know how to feel. Her mother had abandoned her, but she had also saved her life. She had never tucked her in at night, but she had apparently been to every game she had in elementary school. This day was so confusing and exhausting that she desperately wanted to go and lay down. I just have one last question. Why are you only showing up now? Unconsciously, Joanne glanced at Malaki out of the corner of her eye. It was a lightning-quick movement that Anna never should have caught, but with her newly enhanced body and senses it was as easy as breathing. Wait. She slipped out of her boyfriend's grasp and stared at him in complete shock. You. Anna didn't know what the relationship between her mother and Mal was, but she was beginning to pick up on small things. The complicated light in her boyfriend's eyes and her mother's stammering was rather telling, and soon she came to an understandable conclusion. Malachi Jade. Saint. I'm only going to ask you this one time, she growled. Did you fuck my mom? Mal, number. Joanne, N. No. Why would you think that? PG. I feel like I've missed a few episodes. Malachi immediately waved away all of Annalise's suspicions as he placed his arms on both of her shoulders. Joanne's just a friend, and I knew, but I'm not your friend. Pick your fucking battles, Malachi reminded. Anna looked somewhat betrayed and her violet eyes were filled with hurt. How did you find out? Mal didn't know how much he was allowed to say. I told him. I thought he was unconscious but he heard it anyway, Joanne admitted. And why the fuck were you around my boyfriend while he was unconscious? Anna roared. It wasn't like that. It was right after we failed to apprehend Alex Heller and Joanne didn't mean to let that bit of information slip out, but she had been flustered by this unexpected situation. Unfortunately, her daughter had caught it anyway. Anna questioned. By now, she had heard enough to be able to put a clear picture together. All of Malachi's girlfriends knew that he was working with the Dark Angels to apprehend that monster disguised as a man. But Anna was the only one who knew the specifics of how that partnership came to be, since she and Mal were together when he was kidnapped. She knew about the supposed boss lady whom he freed from under that slimy bastard's thumb in the first place. And though it was a small reach, this woman's fancy suit and Mal's referral of her as a friend made it seem like it was that much more plausible. Are you the director of the Dark Angels? Joanne froze and opened her mouth to refute Anna's claim when her brother further blew her cover. Jesus, is that what you've been doing all this time? Is this where all that money came from? PG cried. How much money? Anna asked. $8 million. Fuck. I had $8 million in a secret account and you never said shit. My cupboard at home is full of ramen noodles and prayers. Can you honestly blame me for not wanting to tell you about the money before? Anna fell silent, unable to refute her uncle's words. If she'd had that amount of money before she'd fully mature, then there's no telling what she could have gotten herself into. Blowing through the money was the best case scenario. It was a very high likelihood that she could have ended up dead in a ditch somewhere. Anna put away those unnecessary thoughts and looked back at her mother like she was waiting for an answer. Joanne looked like she wasn't prepared for this level of interrogation and she weighed her options in her mind. In the end, she decided that the last thing she wanted was to start off her relationship with her daughter by lying. Yes, I am, she admitted. Does that surprise you? It surprises me. Shut up, Peter. Anna ignored the squabbling of the two of them as she looked at her mom in a new light. Now that she knew about the way she had lived the last 2 years of her life, she couldn't make herself be as mad as before. Coincidentally, Joanne also noticed the way her daughter was looking at her and she realized that her daughter must have known quite a bit. So, it seems like you already know how Mal and I met then. Yay. I'm sore. I beg your pardon. To prove that she was serious, Anna pulled off her panties and tossed them directly into Mal's face. You were meditating on the moon, right? Then let's put it to use. Malachi could already feel his rational psyche slipping away as he stared at Anna's knockout figure. He had of course seen her naked before, but when you love someone enough, every time feels like the first time. Anna's body was dangerously alluring, with wide hips and a large chest being her least impressive assets. The gorgeous tattoos on her body, the small silver piercings in her pink nipples, the neatly trimmed patch of hair between her legs, it was almost too much. Were Mal capable, his nose definitely would have started bleeding by now. But even though he was incredibly tempted, he still knew something about this scenario wasn't right. Love, you know I want to, but don't you think that we should talk about the elephant in the room first? Anna didn't look at all surprised that Mal was hesitant and she closed the distance between them and pressed her naked body against him. I don't want to deal with all that right now. I just want you to take my mind off of everything for a while. Anna, this isn't healthy. I know, but you've always spoiled me before, so you can't stop now. Again, Malaki bit his lip so hard it seemed like he was going to tear off his outer skin, and it was easy to tell that he was really wrestling with this turn of events. Anna knew that he only needed one little push until she could get what she wanted. "If you don't want to have sex, we could always have a fight about the fact that you were keeping secrets from me. Couch or the bedroom." Anna giggled as she finally allowed her hands to wander into Mal's pants. "Neither. I want it right here and now." The day-to-day life of a primordial goddess is really boring. Nyx had been doing the same thing, day in and day out for millennia without ever stopping or taking a break. A few billion years ago she would entertain herself through escapades with Erebus, but the two of them hadn't had that sort of relationship for quite some time now. Nowadays, most of her time was spent helping to fend off the Earth from an impending doom the likes of which could not be imagined, and also spying on her newest son and daughter. "It's been a while. I should check on them." Nyx excitedly reclined backwards in her shadowy dimension and used her divine vision to search for her dearest son and avatar. And her heart completely dropped to her knees when she realized that she could not find him anywhere. Nyx had run into trouble trying to find her beloved son before. When his contracted beast was still alive, the gods became incapable of spying on his movements while she was around him. Their divine vision would only show them fragmented images that they couldn't fully process, and they had no idea what the reason might be. But what was happening right now was totally different from that. Her ability to see Malaki wasn't fragmented, it was gone. Immediately, she switched to her connection with him and let out a sigh of relief upon learning he was still alive. She descended onto the mortal world and went searching for him, curious about what he could be doing that could hide him from her divine sense. But upon finding him in Anna's apartment, she realized that he wasn't doing anything at all, at least not consciously. She was glad that she had chosen to completely hide her presence when she came down here, or else she would have interrupted a rather private moment. Malaki and Anna were kissing right in front of the door, and it didn't seem like they had any intention of moving. The two of them only separated so that Malaki could pull his shirt off, and Anna lunged at the opportunity to run her hands down his body. "Should I be watching this? Probably not. But I'm going to do it anyway." Nyx folded her legs and started floating in the air, clearly intrigued by this scene. Whether it was creepy or not, she didn't really care. She was a Greek goddess after all. They were the original freaks in the sheets. Anna used her newfound strength to push her boyfriend against the wall as she slowly left a trail of kisses down his abdomen. When she reached his navel, she hooked her fingers onto the waistband of his sweatpants and pulled them down excitedly. Anna had seen Mal's member numerous times before, but never erect. The length and thickness were both far beyond anything she had ever experienced, and she didn't know if she could fit this in her mouth, much less her vagina. But Anna wasn't a quitter, so since she'd been the one to start this, she couldn't back out now. If Sandluna could do it, then she could too. She stuck out her long pink tongue and gave it a long lick to the best of her ability. The small groan Mal released in response spurred her on further and prompted her to try to fit it inside of her mouth. Since she couldn't take something this large into her throat, she compensated by using her tongue to stimulate him even further. This wasn't Mal's first time receiving oral, as had done it a few times, but this was the first time he'd been with a woman who clearly got aroused from it. Her eyes were filled with so much love and lust that it made him even more excited, and he grew harder just from looking at her. Finally, he lost the battle against his own desire and pulled himself out of Anna's mouth. Much to her disappointment, he lifted her into his arms and carried her to the counter closest to them. Placing her bare bottom on the cold counter, he sped her legs open and immediately started going down on her. Anna, however, wasn't really a fan receiving, so she tried to stop him before he did something unnecessary. I'm already wet, you don't have to." Anna lost her train of thought as a wave of pleasure shot through her lower body. When she got a chance, she really wanted to ask Mal about how his new physiology worked, because his tongue felt just the same as a real one, or perhaps even better. It was warm and soft, and it seemed to easily push past her folds to lick her deepest nooks and crannies. This was completely unlike anything she had ever felt before, and now she fully understood the craze that came from oral sex. An experience that she thought couldn't get any better, was further enhanced by Mal's hands that weren't idle. His hand snaked up the length of her body and found her bountiful breasts with ease. Taking them both into his hands, he squeezed and kneaded them firmly as he sent very small jolts of electricity through his palms. The stimulation would have already been great by itself, but the addition of Anna's nipple piercings made it several times stronger. Mal heard Anna's cries increase in volume. At the same time he felt her insides clamp down around his tongue as she squeezed his head with her thighs. It was clear that she was having a hard time enduring and wanted him to take things a bit easier on her, but the sound of her heavy breathing had already spurred him past the point of return. He held her down firmly as he encircled her swollen clit with his tongue, and the effect was nearly instantaneous. "Gonna come." Instead of screaming like Luna or Anna groaned loudly when she orgasmed, and let out a string of alluring profanity that made even Nike blush. A loud cracking sound could be heard as Anna turned part of the counter to dust underneath her grip as her eyes rolled back into her head. When her body finally started to come down from its orgasm, he gave her one last lick before he finally released her trembling figure. "I can't feel my legs," she admitted. "Give me a few minutes and then we can." Anna didn't know why, but his voice within her mind was so intoxicating that she felt her body relaxing to accept him. His obsessive love was being transmitted and shared with her loud and clear, and in turn she began to share these feelings of possessiveness and fervent need. Mal continued to push his hips forward so that he could fit inside of Anna, and he had yet to notice that she was nowhere near as tense as before. If he was honest, he was too distracted by how incredible she felt. She was so wet that he could slide in with minimal effort, but she was also so tight that it felt like she would never let him go. Malachi pushed past Anna's cervix before he even realized it, and he was finally inside of her fully. Anna was surely in pain, but for some reason her boyfriend's every moment felt so good that she barely felt any discomfort. Once he slowly started thrusting inside of her, she reached her second orgasm in no time as all of her sweet spots were stimulated at once. When their kiss broke, Anna dug her short black nails into Mal's back hard enough to break his layer of skin. This was good, the best even, but she wanted more. She wanted Malachi to make her forget about everything in the world except for the two of them. "Fuck me harder. Make me yours." Never needing to be told twice, Malachi upped his pace and started slamming his body into Anna's with a desperate fervor. The sound of their bodies slapping together echoed around the dark room as Anna's ability activated on its own. Her tattoos started to glow a beautiful purple color, and Mal felt a new wave of pleasure assail his mind. Anna's body had just gotten several degrees warmer out of nowhere, and it enhanced his experience to a previously unreachable height. After enduring for around 20 minutes, Mal finally couldn't endure any longer and felt his own orgasm approaching. It was then that he realized that he didn't know what he was about to give Anna. Since he wasn't flesh and blood, he had no sperm. It wasn't something that he could consciously alter like with his members' hardness and rigidity. "Fuck, I'm going to come again." After listening to Anna's desperate moans, he decided that he didn't care to figure it out all that much. With one final thrust, Malachi groaned as he knocked against Anna's cervix for a final time as he came inside of her. The feeling of relief and pleasure that he experienced upon climax was 100 times better than it used to feel. It was more powerful, intimate, and addictive. He definitely understood why Nix had warned him not to do this before he was ready. "You came inside. It feels so good." Looking down, he found Anna twitching absent-mindedly as she struggled to catch her breath. He opened his mouth to say something, when he heard the sound of something dripping onto the floor. The source was a black, jelly-like substance that was leaking from Anna's vagina. "He's so amazing. He can never leave me." Almost as soon as Mal saw his sperm leaking out of Anna, he heard her thoughts in his mind. He wasn't sure what he had done, but he knew that it had made intercourse significantly more meaningful. While Anna and Malachi were enjoying their dreamlike first time together, Aisha and Aubrey had decided to take a small field trip. The two girls were walking hand in hand through a pair of iron metal gates when Aubrey suddenly froze in her tracks. "Is it working? Can you see something?" Aisha asked worriedly. It's working," Aubrey admitted in wonder. The two of them had entered into a cemetery on the outskirts of the city. As soon as the young Saint girl stepped out of the car, She could feel an ominous sensation all the way from the parking lot. But after crossing the threshold, she could see multiple departed spirits hovering over their graves, or even standing beside loved ones who were paying their respects. "You're not afraid, are you?" Aisha asked worriedly. "No. They're all really gentle and sad," she admitted. The two of them continued on their walk, passing by spirits with no trouble, just as Aubrey had predicted. But now that she knew she could indeed see spirits, she became even more anxious about what she might find when they reached their destination. With every step that Aubrey took, her heart beat more and more uncontrollably. If these spirits were here then, maybe. Taking a deep breath, she and her girlfriend finally arrived in front of two specific gravestones. Their names read Marcus Saint and Tashana Saint. Aubrey searched and searched, but their spirits were nowhere to be found. "Well," Aisha asked gently. "They aren't here. They've already found peace." Aisha immediately pulled her girlfriend in for a hug, even though she did not appear to actually be sad. In that moment, she just felt like it was the right thing to do. "Why did you want to do this?" Aubrey took a moment to answer, as the words in her mind felt like they were struggling to come out. "I wanted to tell them about this new family that Mal and I supposedly have now. I think they would like to know that we're being taken care of, but I don't want them to think that I've forgotten them either." Aisha said nothing as she ran her fingers through her girlfriend's new curly gray hair. It seemed like she was struggling to talk, so she just wanted to be there and listen. "I also wanted for them to tell me that it was okay. Calling someone mother who my brother and I have only known for a few months is kind of—" "Do you want to be Nyx's daughter?" Aisha asked gently. I think it may be nice." "Then you shouldn't focus on how strange something is. You're not the kind of person who gets close to people easily, so if something has drawn you in about this goddess, then she must be worth embracing fully." Aisha's words seemed to resonate with Aubrey and left her with a fair amount to think about. She was now anxiously awaiting the next time that she would see Nyx, in the hopes that she could sort all of these new feelings out, and maybe even her new older brother Thanatos. Aubrey and Aisha went back home not long after that, but the mood wasn't as depressive as one would have thought. If anything, the girls were in a more thoughtful mood than a somber one. They held hands all the way up until they entered the front door of Aisha's mansion. "I think that I'm going to go and jump in the bath." Aubrey casually stretched her muscles and gave her girlfriend a view of her curvaceous body that was further enhanced by a blessing. Even though Aisha wasn't inexperienced by any means, every time that she looked at her girlfriend now she felt like a prepubescent boy, dangerously horny and incredibly nervous. I'll join you," she stammered. Aubrey paused and looked at her girlfriend curiously. "Are you asking me or telling me?" "Be both." Aubrey wasn't oblivious to her girlfriend's new opinion on her looks, and she would be lying if she said that she didn't enjoy this new attention. "All right then. You have to wash my back though." "I'll wash every damn thing you've got." Arias started circling the young girl like a lion stalking his prey, and yet his bright smile never left his face. "I'm curious, Aisha. I had thought for sure that you would have been one of the first ones to join in the bringing of the new era, and yet you stand on the wrong side." "Why might that be?" "Do I seem like some kind of bigot to you?" "Why the hell would I have an interest in ruling over any humans?" "Well, you certainly seem like the kind of person who has no interest in the current status quo." Even though she was one of the most famous women in the world, Aisha had a terrible reputation in the media. Her dislike of taking photographs with anyone other than small children had caused the world to label her a diva who thought she was too good for others. She didn't do commercials, toy deals, sponsorships or anything else that would have helped to improve her image. As a result, the way the world saw her just became worse and worse over time. And Aisha liked to pretend that she was immune to it, but sometimes the things that people said really got to her. "I hate all of you. None of you know me, yet you act like you're in some higher place to make assumptions about the contents of my character. You're all the fucking Sam." "Watch it." Faster than Aisha's eyes could follow, Arias appeared beside her with a blade of light pointed between her eyes. "I will tolerate a lot of abuse, you know, but you will not compare me to those filthy humans for even a single second. Such disrespect is egregious enough for me to claim your life." Arias put away his shining weapon and gave the young girl a distasteful look. "This conversation has become unpleasant for me, so I'll be taking my leave. Should I see you again, your head is going to roll, alongside those humans that you seem to be oh so fond of." Just as he claimed, Arias disappeared from Aisha's home in a golden flash of light and left her standing there frozen. It had been a full 5 minutes after he left when Aisha's knees finally gave out from underneath her and she collapsed onto the floor. For the second time in her life, she had faced certain death that she had no way to escape from. She didn't know why Arias had chosen not to kill her, but if he had, there would have been nothing that she could have done about it. It was just as terrifying as it was the first time it happened. It had been years since she'd had her last panic attack, but once that feeling of difficulty breathing set in and she had a familiar pain in her chest, she knew exactly what was happening. She was so out of it, she didn't even hear the sound of footsteps coming down the stairs and a familiar presence inching closer. A faint echoing in her ears was all that she could pick up on, and she assumed that someone was trying to call her name. A blurry figure suddenly came into vision. She was more beautiful than an angel, with long and curly gray hair that touched the floor and sinful body wrapped in a white towel. Despite the feelings that this girl elicited from her, it did very little to repair her fractured mental state. She wasn't sure how long she remained on the floor for, but she knew that she was starting to come to when the echoes started getting louder. Aisha, early in the morning, heard the familiar sound of the door being unlocked and she knew immediately that Mal had made it home. Stuffing down her excitement, she folded her arms and put on her best disproving face. He had to pay the price for not coming home yesterday. He hadn't texted or called or even a picture of his junk to tie her over for the night. She was going to milk being upset for all it was worth in the hopes that she would get spoiled to bits. As watched the door swivel open, her stern and unfriendly expression gave way to one of utter confusion, and a little bit of jealousy. Malaki was here, but he was using one arm to support Anna, who was clinging to him like a koala. Her arms were locked behind his neck and her legs were wrapped firmly around his waist, and she was giddy in a way that neither S nor Mal had ever seen. What happened?" S asked curiously. "I'm sorry, love, I know I should have called, but Anna and I got a little preoccupied," Mal admitted. S watched Anna rest her head on Mal's shoulder while looking like she was in utter bliss, and subsequently wondered if she'd been drugged. Everyone already knew that the young girl was nowhere near as unfriendly as she looked, but even then this was an entirely new side to her. Preoccupied doing what exactly? Instead of giving an answer like a normal person, Malaki was once again overwhelmed by the sight of his girlfriend in her sleep attire. He smoothly slipped one of his free hands behind her waist and pulled her body in close to his own. "I missed you, so I'm hoping that you'll let me show you instead of telling you." S knew full well what Malaki was trying to do, and it was working dangerously well. It had been almost a week since they had sex due to Mal's new condition and mental state, so she was already at her wit's end. She also couldn't imagine how good it must have felt to have sex with him now, since his body had an entirely new composition. No, I have to stand firm or he won't take me seriously." She was only just barely able to hold on to reason and remain firm under this sensual assault. I don't think so. I'm really mad at you for staying out all night and not telling me." Mal's eyes softened a bit as he kissed on her cheek gently. "I know, and I'm sorry. I'll spend the whole day making it up to you if you let me." S had a small epiphany in that moment. Wasn't this what she wanted anyway? Did she really have to keep pretending to be upset if she was going to get what she wanted at the end of the day? This line of thinking caused that iron will of hers to crumble like a granola bar. "All right. But if you stop early I'll be mad." "Don't worry, love." Malaki was all of Bianca's first relationship, hug, kiss, and he would be her first partner as well, but she would be lying if she said she wasn't a bit afraid. After all, she had already seen a fair bit of Mal's body and she knew that something like that going inside of her would definitely cause her a lot of pain. "Are you disappointed?" she asked weakly. "Nah, there's just something that I wanted to do with you is all, but I don't think we necessarily need to have sex for it." Malaki kissed Bianca again, only much deeper this time. Slipping his tongue into her mouth, he focused on sharing himself with her just as he did with the other girls. 30 seconds later, he pulled away from her and knew that he had been successful. The way Bianca was looking at him was now significantly more passionate than before, and he could feel her emotions in his mind as well. "What did you do?" she asked. "I made us closer." "Do you hate it?" "No, it makes me really happy." As proof, Bianca threw her arms around Malachi and hugged him tight enough to break his spine. That is, if he still had one. He started to lightly stroke her hair as he finally acknowledged the other 3 intruders in his home. "What's good, girls? Been a minute since I saw all of you over here like this." "Serena, don't talk to me with coochie and yams on your breath." "Aubrey, I am already regretting it, but we have no other choice." "Aisha, I think I would have preferred feeling unsafe at home." Ignoring Serena, Mal noticed that something seemed to be going on between Aisha and Aubrey. "What happened?" "What's wrong with your place?" he asked. Aisha clenched her fists as memories of yesterday surfaced within her mind. She couldn't go home. She couldn't bring her girlfriend back there. The fear that Arias would return and kill them at any moment was constantly bogging down her mind and preventing her from functioning normally. At least for now. She wanted to be around someone whom she knew could protect them both. We need to stay here for a while. Is that okay?" Mal had only ever seen Aisha like this a few times in her entire life, so he figured that something must have really gone wrong. He could learn exactly what at a later time, but for now he just wanted her to feel like she was safe. "Of course it is, man. You know my place is yours." Relief flooded Aisha's body as Malachi stood up with Bianca still in his arms. "You girls hungry? I'll make you something too." Ding! Before Mal could finish offering the girls some apology food, the phones of everyone in the room went off simultaneously, the cause of which was a news headline that dropped the jaws of everyone who read it. SS-rated gate appears in London. In the hopes of dealing with this monumental threat, the UN has called for the assistance of the world's top 5 guilds. In the 4 years since Gates had come to Earth, the highest recorded dungeon had only appeared in Taipei, and was SS ranked. Initially, the Republic of China declined help from outsiders and told the world that their blessed were more than capable of handling this catastrophe on its own. This supposed show of dick swinging ended with an entire team of 15 SS-rated blessed being eliminated in under 2 hours. Over the course of a week, the Republic sent blessed after blessed into the gate in the hopes that they would be able to amend this monumental mistake. As a result, the gate failed to get cleared in time, and a break occurred on the island of Taipei. The death toll was catastrophic, and the entire island was destroyed as the monsters started to cross the sea. In the end, a problem that should have been solved in a little under a week instead required the better part of a month to get under control. The difference between a S-rated gate and a SS-rated one was like comparing a little league sports team to a professional one. So how terrible would this new gate opening be? After the disaster on Taipei, the governments of the world came together and decided that they would put all differences aside and provide aid in the future should a similar threat arise. And now, it seemed like this shaky new alliance was about to be called into practice. After the group read the news alert, they understandably fell into a tense silence. How could something like this happen? What kind of creatures could be inside of the gate to warrant this sort of alarm? And most importantly, would those who had to go be safe? Eyes within the room became firmly locked on Mal, Bianca, and Aisha to gauge their reactions. Shock, anxiety, and fear could be seen on all of their faces, except for Malachi, who seemed to be thinking about something else rather seriously. "Babe." Bianca gently nudged her boyfriend to get his attention and looked up at him with eyes filled with worry. "Do you think those things are coming already?" she whispered. Malachi honestly didn't know the answer to Bianca's question. It wasn't like he had some inclination on when the end of the world was supposed to occur, so he was just as unaware as anyone. They're not here yet. The thought was alien and belonged to someone that he couldn't even begin to identify. But it wasn't an uncomfortable feeling, so he decided to trust it. "Nah. It's not them," he said reassuringly. Bianca seemed to relax a little bit in his embrace, but she still seemed to be a little worried. And she wasn't the only one. Aisha was seated on the couch trembling, being consoled softly by Aubrey just as Mal was doing with Bianca. Ring. Mal's phone started to vibrate in his pocket, and he pulled it out to answer as soon as he read the name on the screen. When Morgan saw the serious faces of Malachi and Bianca in the camera, He knew that they had already seen the news just like the rest of the world. Seems you've gotten the alert. Kinda hard to miss. No, indeed, but I was calling to ask whether you had planned to join in the raid, or even you as well, Bianca. The young couple looked at each other in confusion before turning back to Morgan. We didn't know we had a choice. Sigh. Of course you have a choice, kids. Your guildmaster is supposed to be putting together a team of around 25 evolved to meet in London by noon tomorrow. Has she not spoken to any of you yet? Grabbed Mal by his shirt and pulled him close to her so that she could rest her head on his chest. Honey, please don't do this again. Do what, love? You can accept help from us. You don't have to do things on your own again. Out of the corner of his eye, Mal glanced at his sister, who looked like she wanted to say the exact same thing. She had already watched her brother shoulder everything on his own back when she was too depressed to function, and she would never let him carry so much responsibility again. In truth, it wasn't Aubrey's fault that her brother became the kind of individual who was unwilling to accept help. It was just the role that he always thought was best. Rather than being the man who didn't know how to do anything without inconveniencing another person, he wanted to be the one that could shoulder the burdens of everyone he loved on his own. That was especially true for the women he loved. Even when he and Aubrey were poor, he would voluntarily go hungry more than one day out of the week if it meant that she had a full stomach. That was just the kind of man that both circumstances and his father had raised him to be. I know that you want to protect us, but can't you understand how we could also feel the same way about you? The same love that you feel that makes you want to give us the world is exactly what we feel for you. So let us give you something back, if only to prove how much you love us. Malachi gently ran his hands through Sis's long brown hair as he let her words sink in. Not this time, love. Flinched as she felt her heart breaking from his blatant refusal. She felt tears beginning to pool within her eyes and she didn't know how to stop them. But I promise, once you train with Rose a bit more and she lets you pick out a weapon, I will never say no to you again. I will bring you everywhere with me. As quickly as his tears started to form, they dried up. Malachi's sincere promise had touched her to the depths of her soul and gave her new hope. I guess I can hold you to that. Just don't back out of your promise later. I wouldn't dream of it. Malachi looked at the room filled with his loved ones and held his arms out. One last hug before I go? Unsurprisingly, Anna and Aubrey did not need to be asked twice and dove into his arms without uttering a word. Serena looked like she was hesitating a bit, but soon she also inched toward the group. I'll hug you, but don't try to fuck me or anything. Bestiality ain't my thing. I'll kill you. St. Paul's Cathedral is one of the most famous landmarks in all of London. This one-of-a-kind structure has been standing on Legate Hill for 3 centuries and is a widely renowned tourist destination. But now, this world-famous building is the site of the Earth's first SSS-rated gate. Outside of the Golden Gallery, there was an enormous dark red portal that was the cause for the whole world's panicked state. However, there already existed a small amount of hope in the hearts of many. And the source of this hope was the team of 100 heavily armed blessed standing outside of this crack from another world. How much longer do you think it will be before we go inside, Guildmaster? Flygrave Pound and DD new updates at novelhall.com. Morgan turned towards his newest protege in Ragnarok, Yoamaki, and shrugged his shoulders. Hard to say. Immortal Moon had a late start as their guildmaster was wrapped up in some messy business. The young man tilted his head like he didn't quite understand. What could have been so messy that she missed a worldwide alert? Morgan looked uncomfortable as he tried to spit out the best excuse he had. Well, it could have been anything, lad. That's the life of a guildmaster. Someone's always trying to fuck us. Rio wrongly assumed that Morgan's words were metaphorical and not literal, and Morgan had absolutely no intention of correcting that false belief. What is that? One of the blessed pointed into the sky towards the east and garnered the attention of everyone present. Flying ever closer was an enormous creature that sent chills down the spines of most onlookers. It was an entirely black sphinx, with wings made from lightning and burning black flame on the tip of its tail. Several members thought that there may have been a gate break at another location, but they could not sense any hostile intent from the approaching creature. "Easy lads," Morgan warned. "These are just the last of our little group." His words proved true when the creature suddenly hovered above their heads, and beautiful women started sliding down from its enormous back. One by one, members of Immortal Moon landed safely on the ground among the unit. They all seemed rather chipper for people who were about to go into a literal death trap. "That was fun. I'm glad we made him give us a ride. I feel less nervous now. He's like our own little taxi service." "Yay, but don't let his girls hear you say that. They've been acting mad possessive lately." It could not be made certain by simply glancing at facial expressions alone. "Today isn't just to SSS-rated raid. It is an opportunity for us to show humanity that we want to walk beside them, not above, and that we will protect them from any threat, be they man or monster. Even though we have the powers of gods, we are no better than the average man. To find true tranquility in our world, we must cast aside any hidden prejudices, and focus on making the world a better place for all. But that is a tomorrow problem." Enzo drew his weapon from his back, a large macuahuatl that was made with a strange black wood and magical stones embedded in the sides. "Today, I and the children of the Aztecs will lead the charge. Stick together, and do not give way to despair." A round of rousing cheers erupted as Enzo and all 25 of his accompanying guild members charged into the portal. The members of Ragnarok and Platinum Scale were next to follow, with Dead Sea entering after them. Leaving Immortal Moon as the last ones to enter, and Luna gave a small speech of her own to her guild mates. "I know all of you have agreed to come along because you want to fight, but I don't want you running onto the front lines unless it's absolutely necessary. Your lives are my top priority." Luna's sincerity touched the hearts of all of her guild members, and they felt like they had indeed chosen the right organization to sign with. However, they couldn't follow her orders just this once. "We appreciate the sentiments, my lady, but we didn't come here to hide. We're all prepared to fight with everything we have, so you don't need to worry about us." Faced with such firm resolve, Luna couldn't do anything but smile bitterly. "I see. It appears I was worried for nothing then." With Malachi and Bianca at her back, she confidently started walking towards the portal. It seemed like she didn't have a worry in the world, but Malachi and Bianca knew full well that her act was a facade. "Darling. Please. I'll protect them, love. I promise that we won't lose a single member today." Malachi thought reassuringly. "Thank you." After receiving such a firm promise, Luna could finally relax a little bit knowing that the girls she took care of like her own children would be protected. The members of Immortal Moon finally passed through the ominous red portal to face the unseen threat waiting inside. After they were all inside, a figure in white robes and a mask appeared in the area they were once standing in. He pulled out a small communication device from within one of his many pockets and punched in a few key codes before holding it up to his mouth. "Inform His Eminence that they are all inside. The sentinels are cleared to move." "Serena, training fucking sucks." "Anna, all of this training isn't going to make me lose my butt, is it?" "Mal really likes my butt. I am also worried about that." "Serena, someone please kill me." "Aubrey, what have I done to deserve this?" After training this newest batch of recruits for the past several hours, Rose Ortega had reached an undeniable conclusion. This group was comprised of the most talented mismatches she had ever seen. Serena was a complainer, but once she got it out of her system she was a real physical specimen who did everything Rose asked her to do flawlessly. Annalise was a real monster in the strength department, as she was one of the only people Rose had ever sparred with who could break her bones with a punch. This was a natural with her telekinetic and blessed abilities, but when it came to fighting hard light simulations it was revealed that she wasn't much good at it. She was just too gentle to kill or harm anything outside of a life or death scenario. And Aubrey? She was every bit a monster as her older brother. She was highly above average in every conceivable category, and she was an adept in hand-to-hand combat as well. But what Rose was really impressed by were her abilities. She was already so proficient with the power of wind. She could literally suck the air out of an opponent's lungs and asphyxiate them without lifting a finger. And when using magic, she learned how to create small objects out of thin air that never went away. Although Aubrey still had yet to touch her death element, Rose was doing her own research on how to allow her to play with it in as safe a manner as possible. "All right girls, let's call it a day," Rose said. "You've all done great, and I know you must be worried, so go home and get some rest. I'll see you on Monday." "Wait, what about my ass and mine?" Serena barely warned Anna in time for her to see a steel beam falling from the sky on a collision course directly for her head. She threw her hands up like she was hoping to stop it via her telekinesis, but because she had reacted so late she only managed to slow its fall by a little bit. The beam connected with her temple, and she immediately went down like a sack of potatoes. The last thing she saw before her vision went dark was two men floating in the sky. Even though they were far above the open ceiling, Anna could still make out their familiar white robes and strange new demonic masks. Arseholes. Contrary to what Mal was expecting, the portal did not lead to some barren wasteland that was teeming with even stranger wildlife. Under a moonless black night, the unit of Blessed appeared in front of an absolutely enormous castle. It seemed like even the members who'd been the first to blindly charge in weren't expecting such scenery either. Enzo raised a single fist to quiet all of his men as he looked around blindly for any sign of enemies. Morgan and Luna were the only ones who didn't bother looking around and instead glanced at one man standing in the back of the group. Neither of them asked him to say anything, but he already knew what they wanted to know. Unfortunately, the answer he had for them was less than positive. "No good. We've been surrounded ever since we showed up." Malachi could feel them lurking in the darkness. They blended in with it so well that it was no wonder no one here could sense them. But no matter how adept they were at hiding in it, they could not hide from he who was an extension of it. There were quite a lot, easily around 3 times the amount of people they'd brought to raid this place. And there were even more lurking in the castle a few yards away. The only reason he remained unarmed was because he could feel that they had no hostile intent. Instead it was like they were waiting for something. And when he sensed new movement coming from the castle, he knew exactly what. The enormous double doors to the grand structure creaked open, and every human that came through the gate took a step back. Unlike the beings in the bushes, this individual was taking no measures to hide its presence or its power. And it was frightening. Click, click, click. The sound of heels landing on top of cobblestone drew ever closer as a figure cut through the fog. A beautiful woman was being trailed by 2 stone gargoyles with massive wings and fist-sized rubies where their eyes should have been. But regardless of how horrifying the 2 creatures were, the woman between them was an absolute vision. She had long golden blonde hair, and a pair of bright purple eyes that were nothing less than hypnotizing. Her full and curvaceous figure was hidden beneath a deep black dress with the pelt of a white creature hanging off her shoulders. She appeared to be of foreign descent, and stood at a tall height of 6'0" while giving off an imposing and seductive aura. "You finally came. We were so bored we thought we would have to come to you first," she said joyfully. "What the hell? Did she just speak English? What kind of accent is that? Is this a joke?" While most everyone was alarmed by the sight of a talking monster, Mal was instead focused on something else entirely. The woman's mouth. It was only for a second, but when she spoke he saw 2 gleaming white fangs jutting from her gums. By now Malachi was easily able to figure out what kind of creatures were in this dungeon, but he was having a hard time accepting it. Who would have thought that he would have ever come across a real-life vampire? "I have to admit, I was expecting quite a bit more from you humans. None of you seem to be truly competent." The strange woman dragged her eyes over the bodies of every blessed present. Like a powerless mortal coming across a higher being for the first time, they could do nothing but shudder in front of her intimidating gaze. However, Morgan and a few other guild leaders remained unafraid and boldly stepped forward with their weapons drawn. The vampire smiled beautifully at the 4 men who seemed above the rest of the rabble, and she couldn't contain her excitement any longer. "It's been so long since we've had a good meal, so I know we're all a bit excited, but try to save those 4 for me, okay?" Morgan was the only one who had some inclination of who this strange woman could be talking to, and his eyes immediately went to the trees surrounding them. As he suspected, Figures started leaping out of hiding like they had been there all along. They sprouted wings and hissed madly like horrifying possessed monstrosities as they took to the sky. Bright orange flames covered Morgan's tattooed hands and he held them above his head. Twin torrents of flame shot out of his palms like homing rockets and exploded in the center of the swarm, lighting up the permanently dark sky in a deadly fireworks show. Charred corpses started dropping from the air like flies. Upon hitting the earth, their bodies exploded into piles of soot that dirtied the tactical boots of the blessed. Unfortunately, while Morgan's attack had succeeded in taking out a large number of the vampires, there were more than a few who were capable of avoiding it. They fell into the crowd like hungry monsters, and the battle to clear the gate finally got underway. While their guild mates were expected to hold their own, 4 of the guild masters ran at the woman who'd emerged from the castle. At her side, the 2 gargoyles rushed to defend her. The stone creatures tackled and intercepted Air and Logan Reeves, leaving Enzo and Morgan free to continue their advance. Morgan summoned a flaming black sword out of thin air and Enzo raised his Makuahuatl over his head. The 2 of them swung their weapons from 2 totally different angles, hoping to cut down this monumental foe before a catastrophe could befall them. Tink. Check out latest novels at novelahall.com. Clang. Boom. A shockwave rippled outward from the collision between them, and the 2 men felt their jaws drop. Despite being the guildmaster of the #1 guild in the world, Enzo wasn't actually the world's most powerful blessed. If the world would welcome anyone with this title, it would likely be the man beside him. When going all out, Morgan was practically a force of nature, and it wouldn't be a far-fetched assessment to say that he could destroy the whole world within a week's time. Therefore, it made it that much more surprising that this bewitching vampire had caught Morgan's attack with complete and total ease. She looked down at her pale hand that held Morgan's sword and raised a brow in surprise. It had been so very long since she had been burned, and yet these flames licking at her hands were strong enough to do just that. She had started to see Morgan in a new light, and looked at him like she found something interesting to play with. Talented one, I believe I'll take you. Before either of the men could react, the vampires backhanded Enzo and sent him flying through the air. Enzo, why has the guild master turned on us? We're fucked. We have to get out of here. After witnessing Morgan turn his back on them, panic like none other descended on most of the assembled guilds. Those that tried to turn tail and run were immediately hunted down by other vampires, turning this raid into an out-of-control bloodbath. Time to work, girls, Malachi said. With all of the panic going on, it was going to be a lot harder for him to keep their members safe, meaning that they had to step in and cut down the opposition's numbers. But remember what I said, loves, this is just the welcoming party, so don't overexert yourselves. Bianca and Luna nodded in understanding just as the column of flames containing Morgan disappeared. His usual clean-cut appearance was burned away as he became a giant alight in flame with dark horns jutting out from his fiery red hair. He swung his black sword in the air and a blade of smoldering orange fire rippled outward. The blessed could have been vaporized in a single blow, had a wall of pitch-black flames not erupted up from the ground and intercepted the attack. Boom! The 2 great powers produced a terrible explosion that knocked man and vampire alike onto their back. Malachi walked through the field of his own flames unfazed by the heat that they were giving off and looked up at Morgan's massive body. He didn't know why his mentor had suddenly turned on them, but given that their opponent was a vampire, he had a pretty good guess as to why. Enzo suddenly reappeared next to him, with a jaw that was swollen but healed. What the hell is going on? Why is Morgan doing this? He just needs a timeout, Malachi muttered. Manipulating the shadows at Morgan's feet, Malachi opened up a portal to his own shadowy domain and sent the fiery giant directly into it. Closing up the portal, Enzo began looking at Malachi like he was some kind of walking calamity. Did you kill him? What part of he needs a timeout didn't you understand? Malachi said exhaustedly. Of course I ain't kill him, even though he had just been betrayed without knowing why. Enzo couldn't deny that he felt a bit relieved to know that Morgan was still alive. "Oh, a better toy has arrived to replace my old one." The vampire Nadine seemed to be largely unbothered by the disappearance of her latest worker and instead smiled as she looked Malachi up and down. The feeling of danger wafting off his body was so exciting that she knew he would have many great uses if she could only get her hands on him. And his body isn't bad either. It may even be better than the Lord's. Nadine licked her lips sensually as she fantasized about having another man inside of her bed for the first time in centuries, and her anticipation only seemed to build with every passing second. "Come along, little boy, let your new mistress play with you just a bit." Malachi remained uninterested in the face of the vampire's teasing and unsheathed his claw from his back. "We'll take her together, Mr. Saint," Enzo said. You sure? She already tapped your ass once, you wanna give her a chance to do it again?" Enzo scowled at Malachi and he held up his arms in surrender. "Just checking for safety." Malachi was suddenly assailed with a terrible headache that made him feel like his head was going to split open. Flashes occurred in his mind, and he saw Anna being struck in the head by a falling beam and collapsing onto the ground. The last thing she saw before she passed out was two men floating in the sky above the open ceiling, wearing the same white robes that Arias and his followers could be seen wearing. "Enzo. Change of plans," Malachi muttered. The guild master suppressed a shiver when he felt Malachi's tone and demeanor do a complete 180. 3 pairs of huge black wings burst out of his back and Enzo was nearly blown away by the gust of wind they produced just from being unfurled. Malachi reached up towards his face and removed his mask before dropping it onto the ground. He inhaled the cool night air as his swirling purple eyes changed to a sadistic and murderous red. "I think I'm gonna lose control just a little bit. So your new job is to make sure none of our people get hit when that happens, all right?" Before Enzo could ask what was going on, he heard the familiar rumbling of thunder from overhead. Out of nowhere, dense black storm clouds began to cover the sky, bringing with them a brutal downpour and a storm of black lightning the likes of which left huge craters in the ground. If Enzo didn't protect the blessed they'd come with, they were all going to end up as collateral damage. But for the life of him, he couldn't understand why Malachi was suddenly behaving so recklessly. However, before he could ask him, he had already disappeared from where he stood a mere moment ago. The vampire Nadine looked at the storm coming overhead and clicked her teeth in annoyance. She tried to raise her arm and protect herself from any wayward lightning, but she couldn't move her arms. As a matter of fact, she couldn't move her entire body. It was like she was being held in place by some invisible force that had no intentions of relinquishing her from its grasp, leaving her with no choice but to take this lightning bolt head-on. Boom! When the smoke cleared, Nadine was relatively fine save for a few scorch marks, but the lavish dark dress she wore was damaged in several places, exposing patches of her flawless skin. "This is unreal," she muttered. A gust of wind blew her hair into her face, and she found Malachi flying towards her while wearing a vengeful look. "Seems we're out of time to play, so you and every other monster in this gate need to die quick." Check out latest novels at novelahall.com. As Nadine looked into the face of the man who was about to deliver her a swift and cruel death, an emotion she never expected started to bubble within her stomach. I love him. Anna. "Anna, are you okay?" "She's not waking up." After the girls saw Anna hit the ground, they immediately forgot all about the danger of falling debris and rushed to her side. Upon assessing her injuries, they found a rather large gash in her forehead that was leaking a concerning amount of blood. While it was healing, it was very slow, and Anna had yet to regain consciousness. However, things weren't as bad as they seemed. Anna's blessing made it so that her body was almost as durable as Mal's without any additional training. If one of the other girls had been hit by a steel girder like she had, their entire head likely would have been crushed. After they saw that Anna would be fine, Aisha and Aubrey looked into the sky for the culprits whilst Serena remained by her side waiting for her to wake up. High up above, they found 2 men in white robes floating side by side, with one raining down what appeared to be chunks of earth onto the building. Aisha pulled out a staggeringly large golden bow from her storage ring and immediately took aim at the two attackers. As she pulled back the bowstring, two arrows made of blue magic notched themselves of their own volition. Babe, little help. Sure. It seemed like the two brothers were going to start fighting amongst themselves when and Serena let out twin cries of surprise. Oh, thank goodness, you're awake. I was so scared. Near the girls, Anna was sitting up on the ground and wiping away the blood that had run down the left side of her face. I need all of you to tell me something right now. Right before the eyes of everyone present, Anna's hair and eyes were dyed an intense and bloody red. Her tattoos normally glowed a bright purple color, but for some reason they too changed to match her hair and eyes. For some reason, the power coursing through these markings of hers seemed to be a great deal more powerful than normal. Who the fuck dropped a fucking building on my motherfucking face? All of the girls here knew that Anna was significantly sweeter than her outside appearance would suggest. And after spending enough time with her, they all came to see her as a super cute teddy bear who made you want to give them endless hugs. But as of right now, that teddy bear was nowhere in sight. For the first time, Anna actually seemed like a roguish delinquent who would beat you up outside of a bad neighborhood and take all your money. The girls couldn't do anything but silently point at the two men standing around in strange robes. Snitches. I know, right? Anna started walking on shaky legs with her fists clenched tight enough to crush bone. Okay. Which one of you wants to die first? This time, the two brothers pointed at each other as if they were offering each other up on a silver platter. Actually, don't worry about it, cause both of you sons of bitches are going to go together. Anna parted her full pink lips and a huge beam of destructive red energy shot out of her mouth. Boom. Cassius and Griffin took the blast head on and flew through the air like kites with their strings cut. The two of them were sent crashing through a collapsed wall over 50 yards away, and Anna doubled over as she tried to catch her breath. I'm not done with you bitches either. Just wait till I catch my breath. I'm gonna beat you till you shit yourselves. Her threat would have sounded significantly more frightening had she not been struggling to stay on her feet at the moment. Analyze. Looking up in the sky, the girls found a woman in a pantsuit with huge white wings descending onto the battlefield. The sight of so much of her daughter's blood being spilled admittedly caused Joanne to panic, and faster than Anna's eyes could follow she was on the ground in front of her. My girl, are you okay? What happened to you? Joanne seemingly forgot all about the fact that she and her daughter weren't exactly the closest and threw her arms around her for a protective hug. Unsure of what to do, Anna froze up like a deer in headlights and simply let this relative stranger hug her. It only dawned on Joanne a few moments later that this gesture may have been unwanted and she started to pull away regretfully. Anna's hands soon found their way around her mother's back and she pulled her into her embrace. It was just some stuff. But I'm alright now. Mum. Is it too early to start watching Halloween movies or is my girl tripping? As the rest of the girls watched Annalise hug her mother, they felt like they were intruding on a tender reunion. All of them already heard about Joanne from either Anna or Malachi, and now that they were seeing her for the first time they weren't sure what to say to her. After all, it wasn't every day that you came across the head of a government agency like this. The four of them simply stood around motionlessly like they were waiting to be introduced. Hey, so are we sure that Malachi didn't fuck her mom too? Serena asked quietly, because now that I'm looking at her, she really seems like his type. Became annoyed and pinched her daughter hard on the butt to silence her. But as upset as she was, she couldn't ignore the truth of her words. Joanne was every bit as pretty as Anna was, with a mature body and seemingly warm yet fiery personality. She was exactly the sort of woman who Malachi would be attracted to. Inadvertently, ended up making herself a bit jealous. After having an injection of Malzercent into her body, she and the girls shared his heightened emotions. As such they were more likely to feel these intense fits of possessiveness. For the first time, waffled a bit on whether or not putting someone into an unending coma was really such a cruel thing to do. I should introduce you. Anna suddenly pulled away from her mother and held out her hand towards the group. These are my friends Serena, Aisha, Aubrey, and Aubrey. Hi there. Aisha, It's nice to meet you. Hello, Serena. I'm her best friend. I shouldn't be lumped in with these other guys. I deserve my own special class." Joanne wanted to say that she already knew all these girls, due to her less than legal surveillance of her daughter over the years, but decided against it. She wasn't a stalker or anything, just a concerned mother who loved her daughter very much. There was a difference. While Joanne was wrestling with the proper way to introduce herself, a rustling sound occurred from within the rubble. Cassius and Griffin were significantly better off than the girls initially thought, and the only real sign of damage were their robes and face masks that had been destroyed. Cassius was revealed to be a pale-looking man with cobalt blue eyes and short black hair. On the other hand, Griffin had a darker complexion with a bald head and amber eyes. With their robes ripped, both men were standing around in tattered pants, revealing their unnaturally muscular torsos that weren't noticeable before. "Did we stay down long enough?" "Seemed like all of you were having a rather tender moment and we didn't want to interrupt," Griffin said respectfully. "We also had some mommy issues, and so we understand the significance of things like this," added Cassius. "Bro, they don't need to know that. But they shared with us, so I feel like it's only right of us to do the same." "They didn't share, we just so happened to be here." Again, it seemed like the two of them were going to get into another needless squabble. When Joanne decided to act faster than either brother could react, she appeared in front of them and struck them thousands of times within a second, clearly infuriated over the harm done to her daughter. But when Joanne dealt the last blow, she realized that her hands were the only thing that appeared to be hurting. The bodies of the brothers were like iron, and Joanne's hands were aching terribly from striking them so casually. Griffin and Cassius both spit out large mouthfuls of blood before Cassius grabbed Joanne by the neck and held her in the air. "That one actually hurt." "We aren't supposed to be doing any fighting today, but I think the leader can make an exception for this." Tossing Joanne high into the air, he punched her hard in the stomach before her body could hit the ground, sending her flying backwards. Pow! Most likely, yes. Just like Anna, Bianca and Luna could also sense Malachi's anxiety over her well-being, only it was significantly stronger due to their close proximity. They couldn't figure out exactly what had happened to him to cause this sort of episode, but they knew it had to be rather serious to cause something like this. The lightning storm he had created had practically destroyed this entire area. Bolts of lightning larger than any they had ever seen before sent chunks of debris flying in every direction whenever they landed, and with such a downpour occurring above, the land had become muddy and slippery, while puddles the size of small ponds were being created left and right. The two of them looked around for the man behind this madness and found him with one of his claws buried in the side of the vampire's neck, and another in her stomach. Nadine smiled beautifully at Malachi while seemingly oblivious to the dangerous weapons embedded in her body. He easily recognized the seductive look she was trying to give him, and his irritation skyrocketed. Just as he was about to set her ablaze, she parted her full lips to make him an offer that he never expected. "Mr. Human Tilda, is that fire giant your friend?" "Not very talkative." "That's all right. I think I like that even better. I only ask because if you want to undo my hypnosis on him, then you cannot kill me so casually." Malachi's red eyes became significantly more unfriendly, and he dug his blades just a bit deeper into her figure. "Undo it." "But if I do that, then you won't listen to my request." "What I want is very simple actually. If you'll only just I don't have the time for this shit." Opening up another portal to his shadowy domain, he pushed the vampire inside without a second thought and watched her fall into a bottomless abyss. Closing it, he shifted his focus towards the castle looming in the distance and the numerous presences he could feel lurking around inside. With his every thought focused on clearing this dungeon so that he could go back home to see Anna, he had no time to check every room until he found the boss. Instead, he opted for a much more loud and direct approach in the hopes that he could flush the bastard out without wasting any more time. Holding out his hands, two palms full of pitch-black flames sparked to life. He brought the two flames together and held them above his head. Despite the torrential downpour, the ball of fire continued to grow and grow in size until he was literally holding a miniature black sun above his head. The temperature outside became several degrees warmer, and all eyes drifted toward Malachi's winged back. Knock, Knock. Without a single ounce of hesitation, Malachi tossed the enormous ball of flame at the glorious castle walls, and a fiery calamity unfolded. Boom! When Malachi's miniature sun collided with the castle, the explosion that followed looked like it was right out of a Hollywood blockbuster. Debris from the building and black flames rained down everywhere, along with the smoldering corpses of the unfortunate vampires lurking inside. Malachi didn't budge a single inch and instead stared unflinchingly into the flames as he waited for his attack to bear fruit. And sure enough, the result he was hoping for occurred. A powerful aura and a monstrous voice cut through the smoldering rubble, and traveled far into the dead of night. Ingrates, scum, you have destroyed my home. In a flash, a man appeared through the flames and they made a beeline directly for Malachi. Clearly, this man was above the rest of the rabble, as he had not immediately burned to death when subjected to his powerful flames. He was a tall and powerful-looking man, with deathly pale skin and short silver hair that was framed perfectly around his unnaturally handsome face. His body was covered in menacing black armor with a red cape flapping in the breeze behind his back. In one hand he held a very large great sword, and with the other he reached out to grab Malachi by the neck. His glowing red eyes were bright enough to burn a hole into Malachi's head, and his mouth was filled with razor-sharp fangs. You are the one WHO has. Fuck. It took you long enough to come out. What? Malachi placed one of his hands over the face of the vampire and set his head ablaze in black flame. After becoming a fallen angel, Mal's flames worked a bit different from normal in that they were significantly hotter and didn't go out unless he told them to. There were likely some additional effects that he had yet to discover as well, but he needed more time to learn about them. What is this? The vampire let Mal drop to the ground and started fanning away the flames on his face, but fell into a panic when he realized even his magic could not put them out. Then, something Mal didn't expect happened. Instead of bothering to put out the flames, the Vampire King rushed at him while still on fire. I'll kill you. Raising his weapon high above his head, the vampire cleaved Malachi directly into two and split him like dry firewood. The two halves of Mal's body clattered onto the ground harmlessly, but the fire raging across the Vampire King's face had yet to go out. The only reason he hadn't died was because his regeneration was healing his skin almost as fast as it was being melted away. What is this? Why won't they? Wait. In the next moment, the vampire realized that he couldn't smell any blood from his latest victim. His vision was slightly impaired by the flames, but it did not prevent him from looking towards the ground where Malachi's body should have been lying. It was there, but where the two halves of his body were separated, he did not find flesh and blood. Instead, he only found a swirling mass of darkness and nebulas that were entirely captivating. And against all expectations, his body started to repair itself right in front of him. By the Sovereign! What is this? Darling, are you alright? Bianca and Luna finally wrapped up their efforts to cut down the initial welcoming party of vampires and ran to Mal's side, finding him in a terrible condition. He was doubled over, clutching his chest like he was having a panic attack, even though such a thing should have been impossible. I have to get out of here, but I can't. And that boss, it will take me forever to kill him on my own. Let us help you. You don't have to do everything by yourself, Bianca cried. The thinking lights within Malachi's body started to go out before he slipped farther and farther into his paranoia. I love you girls, but you can't fight that boss. He could kill you in an instant and I would lose you too. Just like I. It wasn't of his own volition, but uncomfortable memories began to surface from Malachi's subconscious. He replayed the deaths of his mother, his father, and even his contracted beast over and over within his mind. But the tipping point was when he recalled those last images of Anna. A girl he loved to pieces was somewhere hurt, and he couldn't even get to her despite being able to run fast enough to break the sound barrier and teleport anywhere on the planet he was standing on. What the fuck was the purpose of having powers if he was always too late to save the people who mattered, and the Hires wanted him to save the whole world? Why should he give a shit about something like that? If the world was going to keep taking everything that he loved away from him, then he should just destroy it himself. The negativity racing through Malachi's mind reached a never-before-seen level. While on his knees in front of the girls, a dark, egg-like casing swallowed up his figure. "Mal, what's happening?" Bianca asked worriedly. The two girls placed their palms against the egg containing Malachi and tried to gain a glimpse into what was going on inside. Unfortunately, all they could feel was Malachi's swirling emotions and the cool feeling of the shell on their hands. "Girls, get away from him, right now." A jolt ran up Bianca and Luna's spines as they heard a very familiar voice in their minds. "Miss Nikes? What's happening to Mal?" "Girls, listen to me right now. You have to get away from him, it's not safe." Crack! A small fracture appeared on the eggshell enclosing Malachi's figure, and the girls could see a red light starting to shine through the egg. Finally, the girls backed away hesitantly as they waited to see what would become of the man they loved. As more and more of the eggshell fell away, they gained a glimpse upon his figure, but he was not in a way that they had ever seen him. In their entire lives, they had never seen something that fit the definition of a monster so well. "My stepbrother had his baby the other day and his little boy got a chin like a cash register." Anatha Shashur. In the largest castle that was the furthest away from Malachi and the group, there was a man sitting in a very lavish throne room. He was unnaturally handsome and regal, with a soft tanned complexion and a muscular body lying underneath a blood-red robe that matched the color of his long hair. It appeared as though he was sleeping, as his arms were folded neatly across his chest and his head remained locked in a slouching position. There seemed to be absolutely nothing capable of waking this otherworldly man from his deeply needed slumber. And then a chill ran through the air out of nowhere, and his violet irises flashed open. The vampire blinked his eyes several times, believing that he may have been mistaken, and double-checked continuously to be sure, but it proved to be the same every time. "Why? Is one of them here now?" The vampire exploded into a hazy bloody mist as he vacated the confines of his throne room, rushing to find the source of his panic. When the first piece of Malachi's eggshell fell to the ground, the pressure that was released from its confines was utterly deplorable. Even though the humans who'd come through the gate with him were several yards behind him, their minds could not handle the burden that his power placed upon them. One by one, they all started dropping like flies onto the ground, without even catching a single glimpse of the creature that was putting them there. The only ones who remained upright and conscious were Bianca and Luna. Perhaps due to their special relationship with the one responsible, they were completely immune to any negative effects caused by his hatching, other than a mounting amount of concern. Whatever this was, it was so negative, so hateful that it couldn't be the man that they loved desperately. But upon searching deeply, they realized that it was indeed him. And it broke their hearts to see him like this. The final pieces of eggshell finally fell away, and a hybrid between a nightmare and a man was revealed. Standing up at its full height, it was at an unfair 7'2". Surprisingly, there was real-life flesh on its body, and not a cheap imitation like before. The skin on the monster was entirely black, with cracks running through it that resembled bright purple tattoos of some ancient language. Like in his avatar state, he had no eyes, ears, or nose. He had only a mouth of serrated teeth that hung open as a testament to the practically endless hunger it had inside. Black claws as long as kitchen knives hung out of his fingertips, looking sharp enough to cut through anything. His dreadlocks floated above his head of their own volition, making it seem like he was back in outer space with no gravity. But the most unnerving thing about this creature by far were its tails. Well, if you can even call them that. There were 4 of them, each as thick as a telephone pole and 5 feet in length. But the size was not what made them unnerving, it was the fact that the ends contained the heads of what appeared to be snakes. They were clearly alive and just as hungry as their main body, as their forked tongues flickered in and out of their mouths as they searched desperately for a meal. And to their delight, they found it easily. Waiting behind them was an entire smorgasbord of delicious morsels that were lying on the ground like they were just begging to be eaten. Wait. Before either of the girls knew what was happening, the creature had pushed them onto the ground and loomed his body over them. Neither of them knew what was happening, but a rather large tent in his ruined pants quickly gave Luna some inclination. "Why, you must be joking. Here? What is he joking about?" Bianca had yet to see the rather prominent hard-on that was mere seconds away from bursting out of his pants. Luna pointed down shyly, and Bianca's eyes nearly leapt out of her skull. We can't have our first time like this. If it'll help you calm down then just choose Luna," said Bianca. "Why are you offering me up on a silver platter?" she cried. "He belongs to both of us, so we should share the responsibility if anything. He will literally destroy my pussy." "You have a rank healing. You can practically grow a new one," Luna reminded. "I know it's not ideal, but if this can help him in any way then we have to try." Bianca gulped nervously as she looked up at the monster breathing heavily above her. She knew that this experience was likely going to hurt like hell, as she was a virgin and Malachi was even bigger than normal. He wasn't going to be in any kind of state to be gentle with her, and she was likely going to be getting around in a wheelchair after this. And yet if it meant that Malachi might come back to normal, she thought it might be worth it. "I really hope everyone stays asleep, as do I." Their minds made up, the two girls dropped their hands to the waistbands of their pants and started to pull them off. They had only just began undressing when there was a whooshing sound heard above them, and the pressure within the air increased tenfold. The nightmare, Bianca, and Luna all looked up into the sky and found a man floating there silently. He hadn't even done anything but shown up, and the girls were already on the verge of pissing themselves. The vampire sovereign locked his gaze firmly onto the monster hovering above the two women. He honestly had no idea what he was looking at. This thing felt so much like one of those creatures. And yet it wasn't one. Or was it? He had only ever seen 3, but none of them came this small or had this humanoid of a figure. "Perhaps you are a baby, or a runt of the litter?" he wondered aloud. The nightmare stood up off the ground and stared up at this new intruder who had appeared. He was only mildly bothered that his breeding time was interrupted, as he was significantly more excited by another fact. This one was strong. And because he was strong he was full of magic. And because he was full of magic he would be fucking delicious. The hunger that he had forgotten about with the arrival of the girls was now back with a vengeance. Somehow, the vampire sovereign recognized that he was being looked at as prey and a frown formed on his face. "Your kind promised us that." Crackle. In a flash of black lightning, the nightmare disappeared from his place on the ground and reappeared in the air behind the boss. Because he was caught off guard, the vampire was completely unprepared as 2 of the nightmare's serpentine tails bit into his shoulder blades. A growl of pain mingled with irritation escaped the lips of the vampire as recurved teeth, as long as spearheads burrowed into his flesh. The vampire sovereign felt a nasty poison coursing through his ancient bloodstream and knew that he had to get out of this thing's clutches before it was too late. Once again, the vampire exploded into a bloody mist and reappeared behind the nightmare. Grabbing him by a clawed foot, the sovereign hurled him into the distance. Crash! The nightmare crash-landed through a stained glass window, and bounced off the floor before rolling to a stop at the foot of someone's throne. "Why is one here?" "Stay beside me, girls. This one's clearly below the rest of them. Why is this happening?" Looking up, the nightmare realized that it had been thrown clear into the throne room of another vampire noble. A man was sitting on some kind of shiny chair with 2 panicked women sitting on his lap. This entire place was so noisy, but he knew just how to fix that. Dark black electricity began to run along his entire body as he flashed the 3 vampires a sinister smile. The vampire sovereign was flying towards the home of one of his nobles when he felt a chilling bolt of electricity shoot through his spine. And then, one dropped from the sky as well. Boom! An enormous bolt of black lightning fell down onto the castle and blew the entire structure apart. The only remainder of the once proud vampire home were the charred bodies lying amongst the rubble. The vampire remained unconcerned with the dust and debris flying into his face as he remained focused on another fact. "What are you?" he said in genuine confusion. The sovereign knew the abilities of these nightmares very well. Their powers had a distinct feeling of negativity that seemed to be inescapable and filled sentient creatures with terrible helplessness and dread. That last attack was certainly fearsome, but there was something wrong about it. Something that was almost godly. His eyes scanned the wreckage for the culprit and he found him munching on the head of what appeared to be the concubines of one of his nobles. Before he could think of what to do next, he sensed a large number of his brethren approaching. Coming from the west, His remaining 3 nobles were being trailed by a large number of their soldiers. "Sire, was that your attack? I heard it all the way from my bedchambers." For the Blood Sovereign, a swarm of vampires rushed at Mal from every angle, looking to force him onto the ground and subdue him by any kind of available method. The Nightmare was pelted with multiple projectiles, some made of ice, others of blood, and a few were even made from patches of the earth. He allowed these projectiles to pierce, burn, or bludgeon him without any real regard for his own safety, and it was unknown whether these attacks actually caused him any pain. But they eventually must have turned into quite a hassle, cause he decided that he was done playing around with them. Shadowy constructs arose from the ground around the creature, taking the form of enormous black hands. They easily caught tens of vampires by the fistful and either squeezed them to death or simply smashed them into the ground. Once all the flies had been swatted away, the Nightmare resumed looking around for the morsel he was sure would be the most delicious. However, no matter how far he searched, he couldn't find him anywhere near him. Stab. Looking down, the Nightmare found a fist buried in his gut. The hand of the Vampire Sovereign quickly found what should have been the spine of this monstrous being, and sent pulses of icy energy through his palm. Starting with his stomach, the creature's body began to freeze from the inside out, in the hopes of immobilizing it. As far as he knew, there was no way to kill one of these things. But if he could manage to succeed in halting its movement, then he could hold it until he could get in contact with the Dark One. It seemed like his plan was working out rather well so far, when a sudden feeling of weakness nearly knocked him onto his butt. No, not now. The Nightmare venom was becoming more inconvenient with every jerking motion or use of his magic would only worsen the effects. Even now, his nose and eyes were beginning to bleed as he continued trying to freeze the creature. Somehow, this had turned into a test of endurance. If he wanted to succeed and have a hope of survival, he had to endure this challenge long enough for the Nightmare to succumb to being frozen solid. However, it did not seem like he was going to get his wish. While the Nightmare did look like it was having a hard time for a few moments, that may have all been an act. The Nightmare suddenly reached out and grabbed the vampire by the face, digging its dark claws into his flesh. By now, the vampire couldn't even teleport away as he'd been doing for the bulk of this fight. Panic began to set in as the vampire tried and failed to pull away due to his adversary's formidable strength. Once again, all 4 of his mouths bit into the vampire's body and he felt his vision beginning to darken. Opening its mouth wide, the Nightmare positioned its teeth over the boss skull and bit down hard. Snapping, cracking, and crunching sounds could be heard as the creature dined on the head of its enemy. As it expected, he tasted so wonderful that he wasn't sure how he'd ever gone without it before. But the best part of his meal was still to come. After eating around half of the corpse, an invigorating energy coursed through his entire being, that eventually gave way to extreme drowsiness. Bianca and Luna had to run on foot to try to reach the area where Malachi was thrown. They would have used Shiro, but it was as if the young fox could sense the malicious energy in the air, and she absolutely refused to come out. And when the girls finally found the man they were looking for, they could see why. Malachi was standing still in an utter wasteland, eating the corpse of some unfortunate vampire. Around him were enough blood stains to make someone's head spin, and what seemed like a ruined castle underneath him. He did all of this, Luna muttered as she looked at the damage. It would seem like it ... but somehow I don't feel like he was really trying, reasoned Bianca. That was a scary thought to imagine. If this form of Malachi's was capable of effectively clearing a SSS-rated dungeon alone without even trying, then what on earth could it accomplish when it was angry? Suddenly, the girls watched as the Nightmare finally finished eating and wobbled a bit before falling over outright. Concerned, they tried to run to his side when they realized their bodies were starting to feel heavy too. They had only taken a few steps before the both of them fell over onto the ground, mere inches away from Mal's monstrous figure. They tried to fight the overwhelming drowsiness and keep their eyes open, but eventually this proved to be easier said than done and the 2 of them fell asleep right beside each other.